evening, members. Be seated. Start this evening by welcoming a new member, Sarah Kern, of Everton School. Congratulations. Oh, sorry. Might be useful later on, actually. Yes, well. Thank you. I've taken the liberty of arranging where the mayor's announcements for me because I've got 3 people that will be getting Mayor's Awards tonight, and I think it's important that we do those first, and when those people can get on their way, we can debate the budget and answer the questions of the public. Tonight's theme is very much about children and young people. I mean, the first award is to John Pryor, who is currently Chairman of the School of Governors at Addington School, Woodley. Addington School is a special needs school, which means anyone involved must be very special as well. John recently announced he would be standing down from this important role at the end of the year after 23 years of service to the school. He first got involved as a parent governor and continued to participate even after the unfortunate death of his son. John has carried out almost every governor's role in the school and has been a governor for has been chairman for over 10 years. During that period, he's gone that extra mile, and he's been an amazing critical friend of both teachers and pupils. Nothing was too much for him, and his commitment to the school is legendary and unlikely to be repeated. As chairman, he has overseen the construction of the purpose-built building and the complexities of the move. He also managed the difficulties of leadership changes as head teachers and deputy head teachers retired or moved on. The school has had 3 outstanding Ofsted assessments, which is unparalleled in the area and possibly the country. John was a key contributor to this achievement and deserves this fine accolade. Unfortunately, due to a previous engagement, John will not be here tonight, but I've arranged to send his scroll and his badge to him. Thank you. Let's give John a clap. Thank you. My second nominee tonight is Gordon Bird. Gordon has spent at least 20 years heading up the Shinfield Players Youth Group. He has spent an enormous amount of time working with 8 to 18-year-olds, teaching them acting skills, and this has included underprivileged and disabled children. And all his time has been given freely. It involves many nights of the week, and he's even taken them to Prague each year for an international competition, which I might add, they often win. I think you've just come back, haven't you? So I'd like to give my award to Gordon. Thank you. The third group is a group of volunteers who basically call themselves ABC to Read. The group of volunteers are supported by 10 supporting 10 Wokingham primary schools. ABC to Read exists to help bridge the gap in our community and give deprived children more of a chance to succeed in their futures. The project relies on the effort of community volunteers. Volunteers spend half an hour with each pupil twice a week in schools. The child and the mentor pursue a range of literacy-based activities, such as sharing books, playing games, and enjoying conversation. This encourages the building of the pupils' literacy skills as well as their confidence and self-esteem. All volunteers go through a student recruitment and training process, including DBS checks and safeguarding, to ensure the best quality assistance is offered to the children. In the annual school evaluation survey for 2015-16, it was shown that ABC to Read volunteers have had a huge impact on reading performance and self-confidence of the children they helped. 96% improvement in the attitude to reading, 95% improvement in their overall reading performance, 96% of children's general self-confidence and self-esteem increased, 93% of children's comprehension in reading improved. Pretty impressive. Let me please give the award to the people, the Forest of Bricknell and the husband. Okay. Having done that, we can move to the main body of the meeting. Have you any apologies?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Gray, Howe, Patman, Slight, Wayne Smith, Soane and Whittle.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to the minutes. Is there any questions around the minutes? Okay. You've got something to say? Before you go, Gary, can I just say something about the minutes? I think it's important we hear this. For the record, the minutes for council meetings are prepared by Democratic Services, and they are what they believe to be an accurate record of the proceedings of the meetings and the decisions that are made at the meetings. I have never had any input into these minutes other than to ask for clarification. I have never and will never ask for any changes or amendments to be made without the support of the members at a council meeting. And I'm assured that no amendments or changes are made by any party other than Democratic Services. So that needs to be clear. These are not my minutes, they are yours. And as such, they're for you to vote and agree. In the event members are unhappy or not happy with the content, it's up to you to bring that to the attention of the council. In the event they are minor changes, I will put them to the vote. If accepted, I will ask for amendments to be made by Democratic Services and sign the minutes on behalf of the council. In the event the changes are substantial, I am told by Democratic Services a motion in writing is required from the member who disputes the accuracy of the minutes, as presented by Democratic Services, with a seconder. This motion can, if required, then be debated and voted on. Again, I will sign the minutes on behalf of the members once the vote has been taken. It is important to understand the minutes are not and never have been a verbatim report of everything said at council. The minutes do not detail and have never detailed activities in the chamber outside the reporting what members say and authorised questions and statements made by the public and other bodies authorised to speak in the chamber as part of the meeting. I remind members all council meetings are videoed and loaded onto the council's website, so anybody requiring a verbatim account can watch the full recording of the council's meeting. Remember, they are your minutes and only members can suggest changes which need to be voted on before acceptance. I only sign the minutes in my role as chairman, reflecting the views of the majority member of the council. I'm sure most of you knew that, but I just wanted to make it clear. Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to challenge the accuracy of the draft minutes of the council meeting held on the 24th of January. I accept minutes do not have to be verbatim, and I agree with you 100% on that. But they must reflect accurately the events that took place, which these clearly do not. I was going to propose a motion requesting the draft minutes are not signed off for the true record until they are corrected. As for your point about these our videos and are on the council website, they are not. The particular meeting in question is not on the council website, it's on YouTube, and therefore not on the council website. I did make a complaint about this and suggested that if they're not to be on the website, then the link should be. But the bottom line is, I would request that individual members are in a position to propose a motion requesting the draft minutes are not signed off as a true record, and I hope I have a seconder for that.
Do you have a written motion?
No, I don't.
Because it's not a written motion, it's a bit difficult to know what you want to be changed. Are you just saying you're unhappy with all of the minutes?
Yes, the minutes do not reflect the events that took place. I've had several residents who emailed me complaining about the events that took place that night, and the recorded minutes do not reflect any of that. I'm representing not just myself, where my comments were incorrect, but other residents. I cannot answer for them, except that they're unhappy with what's been written. All I'm suggesting is that before the minutes are signed off, they are compared with what is recorded on YouTube, and if they and errors, the necessary errors corrected. Thank you.
Well, it's not for me to compare the minutes because they're not my minutes, they're the members' minutes. So it's, you proposed a motion, it's not written. How do we stand there if we don't have a written motion? Yes, Lindsay.
I have seen a lot of correspondence on this, and our group echoes Gary's view that what is actually shown in the minutes on this occasion does not mirror a lot of what happened at the council meeting, and if you were to read the minutes, it would bear no resemblance to what actually happened. I'm not sure that what situation, you haven't answered whether there needs to be a written motion or not. I said I was happy to second, because I know there's been a lot of toing and froing. If the issue is that all we can do tonight is indicate that we're not happy with the minutes, then on our side we will indicate, and I would ask for a recorded vote to indicate that we are not happy with it.
Okay, all right, I accept that you've got to call in. I don't want to debate it for too long because there's no motion here basically. We've got no written motion to debate, so if you want to make a statement, I've allowed Lindsay to make one, so you can.
Well, I'm not making a statement, I'm just a bit confused. I, unlike Lindsay, have not been party to any emails about what the problems are with the minutes, and it's very, very difficult to have a recorded vote on an objection to a set of minutes when nobody's actually said what the problem is with them. So I don't really see how we can possibly have a recorded vote on something that hasn't been substantively described.
I accept that.
Mr. Mayor, I can clarify that particular point. What I'm saying is not specific words are wrong, but the intent and the content of the whole meeting is wrong. And if you compare the video on YouTube with what's written in here, then you will understand. If you've not read these or compared the video on YouTube, then you can't. I understand that. All I'm asking is that they are compared and the errors there are corrected.
So we can have and it must be a written. Okay, again, I mean, it really, there should be a written, there should, according, you can look at the, I'm looking at it now, and if you look at the Constitution, sorry, just hang on a minute, there should be a written motion. What I'm proposing is if you are objecting to the minutes in total, that you can actually vote against them, have your recorded vote, and we can record the fact you've objected to it. If you want, if you feel that solves the problem for you. Sorry, before I go, can I just Keith wanted to speak?
Thank you. I agree with your proposal. We were very dangerously going to be making the Constitution up on the fly. And for somebody who's been a member of this council chamber for longer time than a lot of us, probably even added together, he knows the Constitution backwards. And for him to try and bounce us in for a motion that is totally baseless, because we don't know what it's about, is inappropriate. But I do agree with what you're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Angus.
Mr. Mayor, according to my agenda, we've been asked to approve the minutes for 3 different meetings. Surely we can agree the meetings for 2. I don't even know which one's been disputed.
24th of January.
Well spotted, Angus. Okay, we're talking about the last minutes, I take it, and you would be happy to vote on the previous 2 minutes, if we could go to the vote on that, and then a recorded vote on the last minute. Are you comfortable with that? Yes. Okay, members, are you comfortable with that? Yes. Okay, do you want to show you're comfortable with that? So there can be no... Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the minutes for... Okay, so the 22nd of November and the 14th of December, all those are supporting the minutes. Please show. Thank you. That's full house, thank you. Right, for the minutes on the 24th of January, we now have a recorded vote.
Councillor Orty?
4.
Councillor Baker?
4.
Councillor Bob?
4.
Councillor Blumenthal? 4. Councillor Barry?
4.
Councillor Lewis?
Against.
Councillor Chen?
4.
Shocking? Councillor Tom? 4. Councillor Howard?
Against.
Councillor Croy?
Against.
Councillor Delisi?
4.
Councillor Doran?
Against.
Councillor Ferris?
Against.
Councillor Grandison?
4.
Councillor Haynes?
Abstention. I wasn't at that meeting.
Councillor Mike Haynes?
Abstention. I was not at the meeting either.
Councillor Hayden Taylor? Councillor Halsall?
4.
Councillor Hare?
Against.
Councillor Hellesheim?
4.
Councillor Hobbs? 4. Holton?
Abstain. I declared an interest and left the meeting.
Councillor Holsford? 4. Councillor Jarvis?
Abstain. Left the meeting.
Councillor Jones?
Against.
Councillor Norman Robinson?
4.
Councillor Pauline Robinson?
I find this extremely difficult to vote on an unsubstantiated accusation with no basis at all.
Ollie, I understand what you're saying, but I did ask for a clear vote from everybody, whether or not they were happy, and there was a majority.
On the basis there is no substantiation of any impugnation against the officers, I'm voting for.
Councillor Kaiser? Councillor Hare?
Abstain. Abstain.
Councillor King? 4. Councillor Lewis?
4.
Councillor Monette? Councillor Lee Sumner?
4.
Councillor Mark?
4.
Councillor Murphy?
4.
Councillor Monroe?
4.
Councillor Sitter?
Abstain, wasn't there?
Councillor Pollock?
4.
Councillor Richards?
Since I also left the meeting, I must abstain.
Councillor Ross?
Abstain. Left the meeting.
Councillor Sergeant?
4.
Ian, would you check the vote?
Against.
Michelle, check the
I
vote.
have to abstain, I left the meeting.
Councillor Smith? Chris Smith?
4.
Councillor Weeks?
4.
And Councillor Eunice?
4. Okay, there is a majority to sign the minutes. So that is agreed. Thank you. Right, if we just move on to number 86, are there any declaration of interest? No.
I don't know whether I need to make an announcement, as I'm a non-executive director at Loddon Homes Limited just recently, so I'll say that, but I'm not sure whether I need to, but I've said it.
Better safe than sorry.
Okay, so we move on to item number 87, which is public question time. There is 30 minutes for public question time. Supplementaries are allowed, but you must remember, members, when answering the questions, you have 2 minutes in which to answer, and the supplementary question must not only relate to the original question, but you have 1 minute in which to ask it. So if we can move to Mr. Spencer Deering to ask his question. He's not here, so he will be getting a written answer for that question. Martin Branch. Martin here?
My question is, a recent new window next door, which overlooks me, was stipulated on the 22nd of November 217 as fixed and obscured to protect me. However, retrospective permission was given, omitting the fixed requirement. As a result, I am seriously overlooked upstairs and downstairs, including a bedroom, a bathroom with clear glass, and downstairs living room. After complaining, the council said one would have to be 6'2" to be able to view into my home. To me, this merely exemplifies that one can see into my house. I have learned that this salient omission of fixed was more likely a mistake rather than a deliberate act. The council has refused to answer 2 related questions I put to them, and has also refused to answer any further correspondence from them. When will this mistake be rectified?
Simon Weeks.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Branch. I understand that you were given a verbal indication by the council that a condition will be placed on the planning permission for your neighbour's extension to ensure that the side window would be obscured glazed and non-open, but that the planning permission issued will actually allow an opening window. I'm sorry that this is contrary to what you had expected to happen. Council officers have been to the property to check the position. Under normal circumstances, the council would only restrict the opening of side windows if they are below 1.7 metres in height from the floor level. Having measured your neighbour's property, the roof light in your neighbour's roof spoke measures a minimum of 1.78 metres in height and is angled in such a way that it does not allow the same views as a normal vertical window. I understand that there is also a distance of approximately 18 metres between your property and your neighbours, and these factors have led the council to consider that the roof window does not have an unacceptable impact on the property. I understand that you've been advised of the council's view both verbally and at least twice in writing, and as the local government ombudsman has declined to investigate your complaint, I'm sorry that the council is unable to take any further action.
Mr. Branch, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Yes, I do. The 18 metres which was mentioned is less than the distance one would have to view a registration plate when you take the driving test. And secondly, the main window which this new window overlooks is the end of my house, the gable end, which is a large window, and it's sort of almost directly in line. And that window, which was there before the next door neighbour's house was even built, is only 10.4 metres away. And you can see straight into, you can not only look into but down into the entire landing, and you can see onto one bed. And of course any traffic going along that landing to the bathroom or whatever. And as a result, I've felt I've had to keep the blind closed, and I've moved out of that bedroom because you feel that you can be overlooked. So even if they say they're not going to be overlooked, you can easily be overlooked. And one of the councillors who went round there...
Branch, do you have a question?
Sorry. Yeah, the question is...
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Philip Meadowcroft.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor McGee Sumner. I believe that you and your executive colleagues, and indeed the full council, need to focus on and consider the implications of what was actually said by three eminent Court of Appeal judges in respect of Workingham's appeal against a ruling from Reading Crown Court, halting our council's breach of enforcement prosecution against 11 defendants associated with their action. At the last executive meeting on January 31st, Councillor Weeks, your colleague, chose to emphasise the overarching importance of Workingham bringing enforcement action against those who break planning regulations. Quite so. This is not a matter on which any right-minded person would doubt its motherhood and apple pie. But we are now in a position where it is crucial that Workingham don't merely learn lessons, whether or not an internal inquiry, if such could be credibly undertaken. As a background to my question, it is crucial to highlight two key points so clearly made in Lady Justice Hackett's summing up, which I personally heard since I attended the entire proceedings. I don't think there are any council members present. The Court of Appeal was not engaged to conduct a rerun of the prosecution brought by Workingham to Reading Crown Court last June. Workingham had merely sought to appeal the collapse of that trial at Reading. Councillor Weeks' statement at the meeting on January 31st that the Court of Appeal had been, he said, inconsistent with other Workingham prosecutions is thus wholly irrelevant to the HSS issue. And secondly, the unjust and unfair verdict against Workingham at Reading Crown Court was upheld without any difficulty by the Court of Appeal, despite 5 grounds of appeal presented by RQC, because A, damning evidence, email evidence of the exchanges between members and officers over a lengthy period prior to breach of enforcement proceedings being instigated had been presented at Reading Crown Court. And B, Workingham had failed to follow the code for Crown prosecutors, as shown by email evidence that Workingham was planning to benefit from any proceeds of crime related to the case. Under the code, when an LPA acts as a prosecutor, it cannot at the same time be a beneficiary. The Court of Appeal found this failure to follow the code particularly repugnant, given that the defendants, if convicted, could have received jail sentences. We have to thank the Court of Appeal for assembling and documenting in the 60-minute summing up just what went on in our council's pursuit of the breach of enforcement action. I think it is relevant to let you know that the Court of Appeal judges took particular exception, expressed when the hearing commenced, to the unprofessional presentation of Workingham's evidence bundle, mentioning that emails were filed, quote, all over the place, and indexing and tabbing, quote, was in a mess. Workingham is now permanently tainted by this affair, and the Court of Appeal's decision about WBC is very likely to be quoted in similar future cases in the Crown Court in the UK, the High Court, and even the Court of Appeal. That is why you, Councillor McGee Sumner, as leader, need to decide whether you're going to be part of the problem or whether you're going to be the originator of the solution. Given the essential background I have presented, here is my question. Will you please give urgent consideration to suspending from office all those members and officials named and shamed by the Court of Appeal for a series of actions and events of unacceptable culture and practice? Such suspensions would only be lifted after the completion of an internal inquiry whose unredacted report is openly published and fully debated in a full council meeting with contributions from Wokingham Council taxpayers. It's a simple choice, Councillor, and crucial to your standing as a respectable and credible leader of this council.
Here, here.
Thank you, Mr. Meadowcroft. Nice to see you again. As I'm sure you will have heard when my colleague Councillor Weeks gave his answer to a very similar question in our executive earlier on this evening, you won't be surprised by my response. Woking Borough Council is not yet in possession of the Court of Appeal's transcript and is therefore not in a position to comment on the details referenced. However, I would reiterate my point that focusing on the latest in a long line of court processes misses the point. The Woking Borough Council has, through a long and sustained effort, protected the Greenbelt from unlawful development and upheld the integrity of the planning process. There are always lessons that can be learnt, and we are looking at those, but let us not take sight of what is really this is about. It is stopping illegal development, which we have done successfully. Once we receive the judgment and we've read it and we've reviewed it with our lawyers, then we'll be in a better position to make a decision.
Mr. Meadowcroft, do you have a supplementary question?
You won't be surprised to know, yes. I beg your pardon. The lack of a transcript is due to a Ministry of Justice administration problem. But you do have the benefit of Wokingham's QC, Syra Sheikh, who could brief you fully and completely. She was present for every minute of the court case, and I think she, like I did, took extensive notes, and you can be fully acquainted with what that is. The transcript will merely confirm it. I don't think there are any unusual matters that will arise from it. You will want to wait for that, you say, and I can't deny you that, but notwithstanding the botched prosecution, botched by the behaviour and manner adopted by Councillor Kaiser and Councillor Halsall, together with the council officers named and shamed, despite being supported by internal and external legal advisors who should have known better, notwithstanding all that, you do not see any need for councillors or officials' misconduct to be investigated or for any sanction or penalty to be imposed on those involved.
Thank you very much. Julian.
Mr. Meadowcroft, given the nature of your complaint against those two councillors, it would be completely inappropriate for me as leader, having taken advice from our in-house barrister, to do anything other than wait for the transcript from the Court of Appeal. I agree with you, the Ministry of Justice are to blame for the delay in us getting this. I have spoken to our in-house barrister, and his view is that nothing untoward has happened from the two councillors you mentioned, but we will look at it in detail and we will come back. Thank you.
Alison Swan.
Councillor Munro. I am a member of the Early and Woodley Town Council's Joint Working Party, and we've been working together to protect the area known as Bulmesh Fields, which is a site of urban landscape value, to protect the area from development. In the sites put forward for the local plan update, this area has had the category of leisure services added to the existing public open spaces classification. This would mean, if agreed, development can be carried out on this public space as long as the use is for leisure. Both town councils are adamant, but this change should not be accepted, especially as there is already a campus for leisure facilities close by, with schools, football pitches, and a new Bulmesh Leisure Centre currently being built. Will the executive member agree with me that this change is inappropriate and should be removed during the review of the site's process?
Alison, thank you for your question. having looked at this with offers, Bournemouth Field, and you quite rightly say, is an important local community.
I can't hear a word.
Which, can't hear me? Not working?
It's working.
Yep.
We just got away from it.
Okay, sorry. I'll try and get the focus. Is that better? Bournemouth Field is an important local community which is recognised in our planning policies, though it is being designated as a site for special landscape importance. Residents are able to use the open space, and there is no intention to change this or provide any additional facilities. In light of this, I can confirm that the site has been withdrawn from the local plan process.
Alison, do you have a supplementary question?
I'd just simply like to thank Councillor Monroe, and I'm delighted that common sense has triumphed.
Thank you. Okay, Maria Gee, I believe you have a question.
G.
Gee, oh, sorry.
Thank you. I note that the agenda and documents, page 94, states the council's plans to make capital investment of 484 million over the next 10 years. Appendix C shows overseen by asset type. Appendix C, page 12, shows spending of almost 900 million, 889,365,000 from 2019 to 2029. Why are these amounts different?
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to read what is a long document and for your scrutiny of its content. You are indeed correct. The sentence on page 94, the table should read 486 million over 3 years and not 10 years. This text would then be consistent with the figures presented in the table above and sets out our planned capital investment over the 3-year period from 2019 to 2022.
Maria, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for explaining that this was an error. I'm a bit worried about errors in the numbers. So in the same appendix, Appendix C, it shows that expenditure planned for the next 4 years on the town centre regeneration is over 60 million. And yet elsewhere it's been reported that Woking Borough Council's regeneration project costs 12 million. And I'm just wondering whether that's 12 million is indeed an error also.
I think the fundamental issue with the town centre redevelopment is that there is expenditure prior to the sale of the residential assets, and therefore the net figures are less than the gross figures. But I will have a look at the detail of what you asked and I'll get you an answer.
Can I follow up?
No, you only get 2 shots on that. Thank you very much. I no doubt if you wish to email Councillor Pollock, quite happy to reply to his email. Okay. Item 88, petitions. Have we any petitions? No, we have no petitions. Okay. So we move on to 89, which is the medium-term financial plan and associated reports. I'll just wait for you to go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, members, as I said, the medium-term financial report, a plan and associated reports. I mean, there will be a maximum period of 1.5 hours to debate this item, and the leaders will be allowed to speak for up to 12 minutes each. To propose, Julie Mickey Sumner, would you wish to speak now?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Do you have a second?
Mr. Mayor, before I move on to talking about the budget, I would also like to welcome our newest councillor to the Chamber, Councillor Sarah Kerr. Welcome, and I'm sure you'll make a valuable contribution to the opposition benches and to this council. As most of us in this chamber will know, we've been the worst funded authority in the country for a considerable number of years. And we went into the 2019-27 period with a very distinct possibility of seeing our revenue support grant turning negative to the tune of £7.2 million, which would not have been helpful to us in continuing to provide the services valued by our residents and which they have come to expect. Just when we thought the government couldn't reduce our grant below zero, we found that they could. However, following consistent representations by this authority and a successive number of leaders, including my predecessor Charlotte Hay-Container, of this council, we have been successful in persuading the government that this course of action is not good or helpful to our residents, and it has been confirmed that our revenue support grant will not turn negative for 1920. However, we need to continue making representations since the agreement is only for 1 year, and any change in methodology of calculating our spending power could see the reduction in our income return next year in a different guise. And history has told us this is more likely to happen than not. It is useful to put our funding into context. The average unitary authority has seen a reduction in the revenue support grant of 41.28%. However, in the case of Wokingham, it's now 100%. Because of the way the government settlement operates, the assessment of our finances has changed in such a way that the council tax now accounts for 100% towards the calculation of our spending power. It is therefore vital that we continue to see a healthy income from council tax, and that we are fortunate that we have a strong council tax base and that we have efficient officers who last year collected 98.85%, which is one of the highest in the country. Increases in demand for children's services and adult social care continue to place budget pressures across these services, and it is therefore vital that we continue to spend the limited resources we have wisely. We must look after those who need our services the most, whilst protecting future generations who will need this council's help and support in the future. Whilst all budgets continue to be robustly challenged before being approved by each director and executive member, following a sign-off process, it is worth noting that we've had to make £26 million worth of savings over 5 years. But when you factor in inflation of 2% and growth in demand of 6.8%, you can see where these pressures come from and why we need a long-term robust financial plan if we are to continue to deliver these services our residents expect. My fellow executive members have worked hard to get this final budget. They have had to be extremely flexible as the financial landscape has changed. I would like to thank them and their offices for their efforts and continued focus. We know we will continue to face challenges ahead, particularly as our population grows and gets older, and it is therefore vital this authority takes every opportunity to be flexible, innovative in our approach. 2 years ago, the Council realised that making efficiencies in individual service areas in isolation, euphemistically called salami slicing, is no longer viable. A major change to our process was necessary. Woking Borough Council was the first council in the country to adopt this ambitious 21st century council programme. As part of this, every single process within the council has been examined and streamlined wherever possible, whilst having the same common aim, to deliver better for our residents. The aim of 21st Century Council is twofold: to deliver better customer service to residents by enabling them to access services digitally and by simplifying our processes to ensure their request is passed to the person best able to deal with it, and to save money through better systems and investment. Progressive technology will continue to be introduced so that the localities team accessing the borough's systems can manage the majority of calls in real time at the first point of contact. A key integral part of 21st Century Council is that 85% of calls from our residents are resolved at the first point of contact. Customers are now able to deal with all their council tax issues, order blue bags, report fly tipping, report potholes, to name just a few, online, which makes the lives of our residents easier and us more efficient. The programme is expected to save £4 million every financial year once it is fully implemented. Phases 1 and 2 have already been delivered. The principles of mythology will continue in phase 3, which will now focus on our adults and children's services. Turning now to housing. In line with the government's 2015 budget settlement, our council house tenants' rents continue to be reduced by 1% per annum, with the last period for this settlement occurring in 1920. Whilst this is indeed good news for our tenants, it does place additional pressures on our housing maintenance programme. I am, however, pleased to announce that we have managed to deliver our maintenance programme with continued investment from our reduced rental income whilst maintaining a safe and prudent budget. We continue to focus on delivering more affordable housing for our borough, and Woking Housing Limited, our private housing company, are in the process of reviewing the next sites that we can deliver more sites such as Phoenix Avenue. Building 21st century housing that meets the needs of a modern family will continue to be a priority for this council. Now turning to capital investment. We on this side of the chamber know that it is our duty, even in times of financial difficulty, to invest. By investing in our infrastructure and services, we are investing in our residents' future and well-being. This budget includes a significant level of new capital investment in the borough for 2017-18 and on to 19. A total of 500 million shows our commitment to the provision of infrastructure, regeneration across the borough and the creation of an investment portfolio. Each of these areas are based on sound financial principles and comes with income streams which will repay any borrowings and deliver a surplus from the investment back into council services. All our borrowings are undertaken at fixed interest rates at a time when rates are incredibly low, and so there is no danger of the council being affected by a sudden rise in interest rates. Much of this is funded by developer contributions or forward-funded borrowings which are being repaid in the future from Section 106 or SIL. The town centre regeneration will transform Woking Town, and the work around the town hall in partnership with Woking Town Council has been at zero cost to the council taxpayer. All the communities across the borough will benefit from this capital investment strategy. They will get the benefit of improved highways infrastructure, new school places in our high-performing schools and leisure facilities, all at a time when authorities are reducing or closing theirs. This shows the ambition of this council as for generating our borough and innovative ways of generating capital funding. Woking Town Centre regeneration is nearing completion, with 2 tenants already in operation and 3 others exchanged and more in the pipeline. Woking Town residents told us in no uncertain terms that the town centre was dying, that more needed to be done if we were to have a thriving town centre and nighttime economy. And although we have borrowed to regenerate Woking Town Centre, we have an asset that is appreciating, but have the flexibility to reduce our debt should we decide to do so. If we choose not to sell, we can service the debt whilst generating additional income for this authority, and provides us with options where we can invest the income in other parts of the borough or council services. Whilst there are still residents who are unhappy to see the regeneration, many residents actually are pleased that the council has undertaken this work at a time when other towns are declining. And although the work hasn't always proceeded as we would have hoped, we have learnt lessons for future developments and other options within the borough. The council has an investment programme similar to other councils in commercial assets in order to build up additional future capital assets and new sources of rental income, which, although not currently included in this MTFP for 2019-22, to support the services of residents, could in the future years be used to support services to residents in the event a future government removes even more of our council tax business rates. And council tax support other council services in other parts of other parts of the borough. This is a prudent approach and a long-term financial planning at a time of rising need. Our council-owned companies continue to grow and mature, setting a high standard for local authority companies across the country. Windsor and Maiden joined office in 2017, making a £50 million company with a consequent improvement in service quality, resilience and service delivery. We are the only local authority trading company who deliver the full range of local authority adult social care services, including statutory services in the country. A first for us and a first in the country. Optus has detailed discussions with other local authorities interested in the Optus model, and we are hopeful that they will be keen to utilise the service model which has been successfully developed as an adult social care provider, which will increase turnover, provide greater security to the company, its staff, and the quality of services it provides. Optus is a great success and has saved our taxpayers' money whilst improving social care services. Woking Housing continues to build on the excellent work completing Phoenix and Foster's. There were already identified future sites for the next phase. We are investing in approaching the magic figure of 100 hectares of new country parks, or SANGs, paid for by developer contributions. It is important to note that residents can get a lot of their daily exercise by simply walking short periods of time, which they will be able to do in these new parks. The leisure contract for managing the council's leisure centres has been renewed, and we are pleased with our new leisure partner. This contract includes the provision in the capital budget to upgrade or rebuild existing centres such as Rise Green Leisure Centre, opened last September, Arborfield Green Leisure Centre, opened in the summer 2017, Bournemouth Leisure Centre, and a further investment in Loddon Valley and Carnival Pool. These are sizable investments and will provide a significant upgrade to the facilities which Woking residents have available, and contrast with the closures of facilities in neighbouring Reading. Wokingham invests rather than closes. Waste. Our residents have consistently told us they value the retention of weekly waste collection and want to see more opportunities for recycling. This council remains committed to improving our recycling rates, and to aid us in the delivery we will be introducing the collection of food waste starting in April. By recycling food waste, we can divert up to 30% of the current contents of food bags away from landfill. This equates to 100,000 tonnes annually, saving £100 per tonne. Our target is to increase our recycling rate year on year, with the aim of achieving at least 50%. Turning now to community hubs. Our community hubs saw 470,000 visits to our libraries last year. In January 2019, there were 58,248 items out on loan, 2,687...
You're out of time. If there's anything very important...
Okay, the only other thing I do need to add, Mr Mayor, if you will indulge me just slightly more, is on the agenda item 89.4, the medium-term financial plan, which everyone should have on their desk in green. The revised recommendations 1, 2 and 3 are in the bold italic type. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anything from you wish to speak?
I will reserve my
Okay, now, who would wish to speak then, Rebecca? Lindsay can speak. We can just get the names, Lindsay, and then you can speak then.
Sorry, I have 12 minutes, I believe.
You do have 12 minutes, yeah. So, can I just get the names of the other people who wish to speak first?
A bit confusing.
Thank you, everybody. Put your hands down, Lindsay. You do have to.
Just before I start, I'd like to echo welcoming Sarah to the Council Chamber, and I would just like to say a thank you to Helen and wish her well. Thank you. I'd like to start now. This year will, I trust, be the last time the opposition is not directly involved in producing or scrutinising the budget. It is nigh on impossible to produce an alternative in the limited time currently given. However, this year, at the end of my speech, we will be submitting an amendment to the budget. I've been asked recently how we would run the council differently if we were given that chance. After a short period of reflection, I said, we would run the council for the benefit of the residents, not for the benefit of the council or developers. In our view, this council has increasingly become a we know best and dismissive organisation, with many residents, whether petitioners or anyone who dares to question their action, being brushed aside and ignored or given near meaningless answers. Such arrogance. This year, and probably this year only, we benefit to the tune of circa £10 million, and Julian mentioned it. Without this injection of income, we fear Woking Borough Council could have been heading in the same direction as Northamptonshire, and nobody wants this. However, this windfall gives the council opportunity to support some additional projects which otherwise would not have been possible. There are three major issues that need to be addressed now, because if they're not, they will have severe consequences for the future of the borough. They are: the number of properties Woking Borough is expected to build over the next 20 years. Second is the rapidly rising level of debt this council is racking up. The third is the level of services that the council will be able to provide in the future. On housing numbers, on this side we feel the numbers are far too high and do not believe the council has fought hard enough to keep this level down. The way the council treated both the Barkham and Shinfield debates seeking to limit housing numbers gives us no confidence that the ruling Conservative will do anything about it. The Lib Dem group therefore decided to take up this challenge. We have, of this month, launched a petition on the government website objecting to the large number of properties that are being pushed onto Wokingham Borough, and it's the title, Keep Housing Numbers Under Control in already heavily developed areas. Whilst we understand the need for homes, the ones currently being built by developers are not of the right type. The council should be leading here, not just responding to developer demands. We need more 1, 2, 3 bedroom homes for our local people, truly affordable homes, not more 4, 5 and 6 bedroom detached homes, and we need bungalows for our elder community. We have made this one of our main themes of our updated manifesto for 2019, called Homes for Local People, to highlight the importance of getting the balance right. Regarding the rapidly rising debt level being incurred, not only does the cost of borrowing increase as the council borrows more, the interest paid reduces the ability of the council to provide services for our residents. Instead of providing services, the council will be paying off debt. This is not a way to run a council. Without a significant adjustment downwards, we believe this debt will become unsustainable, with all the consequences this could have. Remember, it is the council taxpayer who is the last resort for the council. Regarding services, we believe this is the main reason a council exists. Once they stop providing these services, one has to question the purpose of a council. If at any point the costs of any new infrastructure plus costs of borrowing outstrips the council income, then our service will be decimated. We as residents would end up paying ever-increasing levels of council tax for an ever-decreasing level of service. This is what creates a perfect storm. Over the last 2 budgets, I have raised considerable concerns about the increasing levels of debt on this council. The council has continued to increase its borrowing, increasing the amount of interest rate payable. 2 years ago, the council could borrow at rates below 2%. Now the average is 3.3% and rising. At some point, this level of interest will have severe ramifications for the council and its ability to provide services. Borrowing has grown from circa 50 million only a few years ago to forecast 538 for 21-22. To help cut the level of debt, we will instigate an immediate moratorium on the council's commercial borrowing and reduce the level of this fund from £100 million to £25 million with immediate effect. We would also review the procedures adopted. Standards of performance at Wokingham Borough Council have dropped. The council has produced business cases, that's when they do them, with only half the required information, and consultations have become a farce. I am sure many of you remember the school crossing patrol consultation, where 97% of those who responded objecting to losing their school crossing patrollers were only to be ignored because they did not use the correct word safety. What arrogance! I will now make our first revenue budget proposal tonight. We will reintroduce the school crossing patrollers at the sites where residents, parents and schools clearly indicate they wish this to happen. The council has even ignored the local ombudsman and recently lost a High Court and Court of Appeal hearing where the words abuse of process by the council was used by senior judges, so it's not only local people it ignores. The regeneration project is managed as a standalone project. Any additional costs are ploughed back into the project, making it ever more costly. We understand this project has some allowances for this increase in costs, as they use 3.5% increase rate to provide this safety net flexibility. However, as I just mentioned, the council is now borrowing at 3.3% and rising, so that safety net is rapidly disappearing. The uncertainty in the high street could have serious financial implications for the council, and I feel little or no account is being taken of this position. The way the local businesses in Marketplace and surrounding areas were treated during the lengthy delay in the works, many of whom lost thousands of pounds of business during this period with little recompense, is a disgrace. To help these businesses and others across the borough, we propose to introduce 2 hours free parking in our town centres on Saturdays. The introduction of free 2 hours parking would have to wait until new ticket machines are available. This could be up and running later this year. The government has launched a Future High Street Challenge Fund of £675 million available for all councils to apply for, with a deadline on the 22nd of March. Included in the Challenge Fund are options to include innovative parking strategies to help the High Street. We on this side press the council to apply to this fund and include proposals for assistance with parking schemes. we are willing to assist. The Challenge Fund could possibly cover any projected loss in parking income. We have, however, included an assessment of the cost of our proposal should Woking Borough Council choose not to apply to this fund or do so unsuccessfully. Failure to help our high street could mean a number of businesses may not be with us next year. This would not only impact our towns as a whole, but could lead to reduced business rate revenues for the council. I believe it is in everyone's interest to reduce car parking charges. Such a change, we believe, would help our struggling high streets and attract more visitors to a town. We would also offer free parking at Dinton Pastures and California Country Park on bank holidays and bank holidays only, and after 6 p.m. Local residents should be able to enjoy their local parks without the threat of parking tickets. Remember, they do actually own the sites. The Parks Department would be provided with any additional resources needed to support their services should this policy generate a reduced income. The Council has received a grant of over £1.1 million for highways. This we welcome, as it will enable the Council to repair a number of roads that are not in the original, or not were in the original 2019-20 list. We propose that £300,000 be added to this figure to enable additional roads and also footpaths and pavements to be repaired. Many footpaths have seen little or no maintenance for many a year. Some are extremely poor condition and now dangerous. 21st Century Restructure has been running for about 3 years. In our view, it's been naive and has not achieved what was intended. Throughout this restructure, the Council has employed a large number of interim and temporary staff, which has all but destroyed staff morale. This, combined with what could be considered as a bullying culture, has had a significant impact on the performance of the Council. Our staff are our most important resource. The culture of this Council has to change to become more supportive of them. If the current ruling group is unable or unwilling to change it, then we will. We have two proposals. A reduction in the budget for interim or temporary staff by £500,000 for 2019-20. We believe the existing staff should be supported wherever possible to cover some of the vacancies rather than recruit expensive interim staff. It is simply not good business. Only those posts considered essential should be allowed to be temporarily filled. At last, it has been realised that neither children's services nor adult social care are suitable areas for the 21st Century Programme. We therefore propose to suspend the 21st Century Programme for these two areas. Children's services in particular requires rebuilding and a period of stability. To assist in this rebuilding, we propose to increase the revenue budget in this area by a further £300,000. We would allocate £230,000 of this for CAMS and a further £70,000 for special educational needs and inclusion. We believe the extra provision for CAMS would only in a short time save the Council considerably more than the extra investment. And we must also improve relationship with our schools. Adult social services is experiencing increasing level of demand. It has consistently had an overspend, some of which has been difficult to understand. Before any decision is made regarding our future relations with Optilis, we need a root and branch reassessment as to how the budget for this area is being used and where any efficient improvements can be made. It is far too important to service for a political dogma to interfere with the safety and well-being of our residents, particularly our older residents. We on this side are willing to work with all those involved to achieve the best solution for our residents. Some vulnerable residents may not be able to afford even the reduced council tax they are expected to pay. To assist, we propose to introduce a safety net fund. For 2019, we propose this fund to be £100,000. Now, I have one final area I would like to mention. This is something relating to my own ward of Twyford. For many years, the residents have been promised a new library, but this has not materialised. We would provide an initial sum of £400,000 to enable this project to restart and move towards the provision of a new library and community hub. I would like to now move the Liberal Democrat amendment of 2019-20 council budget, and I'd like to have a recorded vote.
Okay, that's fine. Have you got your amendment? You can second. Okay, does everybody have a copy? Anybody not got a copy? Okay, Lindsay, what I need is a seconder.
I'd like to second this, Mayor.
Okay. Now, as this is an amendment, all those people who put their hands up last time to speak will get a chance to speak, but not until we've debated the amendment. So all those that wish to speak on the amendment, please show. That's it. Okay. Anthony Pollock.
Thank you. It's a great change to have a proposal from our opposition. I noticed that the main piece I noticed was the decision to suspend 21st Century Council on adults and children's. I'm not sure where in this, but that costs £1 million. So I'm not sure whether you've costed that figures, but you've just decided that you've just thrown away another £1 million. The 100,000 as far as the CTR scheme is in our revised proposals will be taken later. I do think your 500,000 for temporary staff will probably put extra pressures on the services and will undermine the provision of adults and children's quite substantially. I know my colleague has Pauline Paddy Simons has had a lot of issues with the need for additional staff because of additional need within the department. So again, taking £500,000 out of that budget, I would expect the quality of our services to decline, which I don't therefore recommend. I think that you talked a lot about debt. I understand you've been talking about that a lot in recent years, but you seem to misunderstand the nature of capital spend. When we put together the core strategy, we identified the needs for the borough associated with the housing that the government at the time was forcing us to take, and that was costed at something like 300 million at that point. And as I said in a previous meeting, the money that we spend on infrastructure is funded wholly by CIRN 106. Yes, we are having to forward fund some of that, and that's done by borrowing. That's done safely on fixed terms. It's not a risk which, if the interest rates start to rise. So again, I think you missed a trick there. If you want to reduce your spend on capital, on infrastructure, then there will be no schools, there will be no roads, no new schools, and no new leisure facilities and other facilities for our new residents. I think that's a poor decision. I know you've been against the town centre redevelopment, but we on this side of the chamber have been in favour of it, and again that is being funded by the rental income from that scheme. We have a lot of tenants coming forward to take up the units. We have had a vision which we've been clear on, and the vision is being delivered. Therefore, the risks associated with borrowings on that particular scheme are not a problem. As far as the commercial investments are concerned, they again are sound investments, long-term quality customers, and are of benefit to this council long term. I do think you misunderstand the nature and the safety around the capital programme. I think that your budget, though interesting, is not helpful.
The Lib Dems propose that provision is put into the budget for providing a designated bay in Wokingham Town Centre with community transport buses that provide services for the elderly and disabled. Wokingham Town Centre, just like the borough as a whole, must accommodate all of its residents and uphold its duties under the Equalities Act 2010. The current lack of provision of a designated bay in the town centre has meant that service providers are struggling to pick up their customers. This is due to the fact that they are unable to dictate where they will be able to pick up their customers from, as it is very much dependent on whether the parking and loading bays in the new marketplace are vacant or not. This has a negative effect on their customers because many have a range of physical and mental disabilities, including dementia. For someone with dementia, to have your transport drive past you and able to stop and pick you up is actually quite a scary situation to be in. With the one-way system in place as well, the result is the bus service has to continue round in a loop repeatedly until a space becomes vacant, which severely limits the service provided and has a negative impact on air quality. Without providing a designated bay as requested, there is a possibility that many residents will stop visiting our new town centre and the community bus services could potentially cease to operate to this location. We do not want to see this happen, as we want to encourage people to come to our town centre and support our businesses, which are paramount to paying back our loan. For future reference, we are also requesting that quality impact assessments are carried out as standard to ensure that the council's finances are not having to be spent on rectifying such issues, thus saving the council money in future budgets.
Thank you very much. Andy Croy.
Thank you. Oh dear, that doesn't bode well, does it? This budget, or this suggestion, contains things that we would all like to see. And there's at least one item in there that seems to have jumped from the Labour manifesto that we put out last year in terms of restoring school crossing patrols. We would, as a group, take this much more seriously if the Lib Dems had the courtesy of giving us foresight of this. It's bad enough trying to wade through the full document pack in a week, trying to get this at 3 seconds notice. Perhaps tells us what it really is. This is a stunt. This is a stunt aimed at getting a few extra headlines on the leaflets. And it's not a serial proposal. And we know it's not serious because in all of Lindsay's speech, he doesn't mention the root cause of our problem as an authority. The root cause of our problem is austerity. And I can't think why the Lib Dems would forget to mention austerity.
Especially down the Labour.
Thank you very much. So that's why we will be abstaining from this. It's not serious.
Thank you. I mean, just going back to Andy Croy's point about austerity, just to remind him again, it was the last
It's very difficult to hear, Norman.
Rattled up huge debts, which is why we're in the
That's
position.
the law.
Beg your pardon?
That's the law.
So, rattled up huge debts and left us with a horrible position. This council has had to save substantial amounts of money over the last few years, and here we have a proposal in front of us that would increase expenditure by at least a couple of million. If you take out this other million, at least 3 million, most of which would be sustained pressure into future years. So all the words that Lindsay said about the one-off payment this year and the pressures in future budgets, this adds huge amounts of pressure to future budgets. So whilst some of the items would be quite nice to be able to do, it's extremely imprudent, I think, to go down this line. The capital investment is not investment for the fun of it, it's capital investment to increase the income to this council. So if you take that capital investment out, you also take the future income out. That doesn't appear in here either. So there's even more pressure on future budgets. So I think this is extremely imprudent and unsatisfactory.
Gary Cowan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think a budget that puts residents first is welcome when compared to what is being proposed by the current this administration. I believe it ticks the right boxes. As I experienced in executive earlier on today, it's pretty clear that Century 21 appears to have lost its way. Have the officers in the Conservative group involved the opposition parties in producing a budget, then it's quite possible that some of these elements and those recognised by Councillor Croy could have been incorporated in the budget, and it could have been a true people's budget. But that opportunity was not there. And whether you blame austerity or whether you blame incompetence, or both, I'm not sure. Thank you.
Okay. Clive Jones.
Can I reserve my right, please, Mr. Mayor, as the secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lindsay, I'm very sorry to do this, but I would like to refer everyone to page 65 of the medium-term financial plan. If you'll see an item approximately 2 inches from the bottom of the page, this is new income generating commercial assets, and is an income to the council of an additional 150,000 next year, 850,000 the year after, and 1.3 million the year after that. Over 3 years, that's a cumulative 2.25 million. That, by restricting our ability to borrow for the commercial assets, would mean we do not have that ability, and we wouldn't generate that income. As I say, I'm very, very sorry to do this, but I have, within about 2 minutes of reading, I have seemed to have blown a £2.25 million hole in your proposed budget. May I suggest that you take the opportunity to withdraw it, to review these suggestions, and we will say again, we are only borrowing if we think we can get a good return on these assets. These are in here, and this is what we are trying to do. I know you will say that you didn't have enough time to review the budget. Why was I able to find it within 2 minutes? This is a £2.25 million hole in the Lib Dem budget, found very quickly.
Where it is then?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Sarah Kerr to the Council after our magnificent win of evidence. And for the record, follows her predecessor Helen Powers need to stand down in the light of a terminal illness of which she was informed of only the day after she won the election last year. We need to increase the number of 1 and 2 bed flats, 1, 2 and 3 bed houses and bungalows being built in the borough, for which there is currently a substantial shortfall, whilst simultaneously reducing the number of 5 bed and larger houses being built for the excessive profit of developers. Both problems have arisen during this Conservative administration. 2 mechanism changes are needed. Firstly, Lib Dems would start to increase funding to WBC's own building company, Loddon Homes, so it can deliver more of the types of properties actually required in the borough, 1 and 2 bed flats, 1 and 2 3 bed houses and bungalows. Under Whitehall's quota system, increasing delivery by Loddon Homes would reduce reliance upon developers who undersupply the types of homes needed by residents and oversupply the larger properties that are largely not for current residents. It would reduce developers' ability to play games with the planning process, delivery schedules for homes and the land supply. Initial additional funding would come from the General Reserve, of which more about later. Secondly, the Community Infrastructure Levy is based upon square metres built. This could be adapted by multiplying the current sill rate by a factor dependent upon the number of bedrooms, namely using between 0.7 to 0.9 for 1, 2 and 3 bed flats, houses and bungalows, keeping 4 bed houses as is, and applying a higher rate adding 20% for each bedroom above 4. This should encourage developers to build the types of homes that are actually needed and discourage mansion building. Remember that a 1 bed home counts as 1 against our housing target, but so does a 10 bed mansion, and yet a 10 bed mansion would probably house at most 4 or 5 people. Whilst 10 1 bed homes would house between 10 to 20 people and count as 10 against our Whitehall target. It would also make better use of our land supply. Lib Dems would investigate this approach. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Keith Baker. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a couple of things I would like to talk about. And I'm talking, the first one from a perspective of Woodley, and it's to do with car parks. Woodley has 4 car parks. They contribute roughly half of the total income to the car parking stream. On a Saturday, and I would advise every single Liberal Democrat to try this, come along to any of our 4 car parks and try and park on a Saturday, on a morning or an afternoon. At the moment, people are circulating the 2 main car parks time and time again, waiting for people to leave. So why, if that is the case, would you give free car parking? All you're going to do is encourage even more car park rage, because more people will come because it is free. It is a nonsense. You totally forget the practicalities yet again. The second point is a more broader one, and it picks up what Councillor Pittacus just said. He talks about changing the SIL. Well, as an executive member who brought in SIL, I can tell you, you can't do that overnight. Another practicality issue. You have to go through an extensive process which ends up with an examination in public by an inspector. When we brought in SIL, it took 2 to 3 years. Practicalities. It's so easy to sit down and put a number on a piece of paper and make grandiose speeches when you don't have to implement any of them. Thank you.
First something bad, then something good. CPE was originally designed to enforce around schools, train stations, and the park and ride. CPE officers seem to have found the golden goose at Dinton Pastures, ticketing scout volunteers who are giving their time for the young people since we can't afford to actually put any youth workers out there anymore. Now the good. The government has recently given WBC $1.2 million for road resurfacing. Thanks very much. Thanks also that Woking Borough Council has decided to spend all the money in wards where Lib Dem councillors are close challengers or there's going to be new councillors there. Thank you very much, WBC. Thank you, Tories. We appreciate telling us how we can get more councillors. This proves that voting Liberal Democrat gets your roads fixed. Thanks very much, Pauline. In our budget amendment, we are proposing to add a one-off sum to be spent on roads and pavement resurfacing that highways engineers say needing fixed. We have not really fixed the pavements in a very long time, perhaps in the town center, but the other pavements look like they were probably in a war zone in other places. Hopefully, they will find some nice ideas in places like Charvo, Loddon, Carnation, Shinfield, Bulmersh and Whitegates, Westcott, Norris, Finch, Hempstead, and vote Liberal Democrat instead to get their roads fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Pittock and Councillor Ferris for bringing up the subject of affordable housing. Hopefully you know that we are pretty serious about that on this side of the chamber, and Lindsay, I know you just joined the board of Loddon Homes, and it's good to have you as part of the team. But just a couple of sort of points of clarification. Loddon Homes is a for-profit registered provider, in part set up to receive grant funding from Homes England. So we could be on dodgy ground if we were to sort of inject £200,000 into it. Where that money could go, and where we do see money coming into, and is to Wokingham Housing Limited, WHL, which is the development company. It's WHL that builds the homes and then delivers them to Loddon Homes. And we are working very hard, as I hope you know, to build more affordable homes. We built 123 in the last financial year, which is a quarter of all affordable homes in the borough. We're working extremely hard to build on council-owned land that is no longer in use, because that land is free, which means the return is greater than if we were to go out and buy land on the open market. So we are working extremely hard to build more affordable housing for the residents of this borough. It's something I think that everyone here is committed to doing. Something that I'm passionate about and enjoy doing a great deal as well. And if either of you want to input at any time, I'd be more than grateful to listen to anything you've got to say. But we have got some new plans, exciting plans, there's many hundreds of more affordable houses coming, and absolutely there is a focus on the smaller 1 and 2 bed properties as well. Thank you.
I can't hear.
Clive Jones? I'm reserving my right to go last.
Is he the last to speak?
You're the last to speak.
I put my hand up.
For the amendments?
Yes, I put my hand up.
For the amendments?
Yes.
case,
It is with regret that we had to say goodbye to Helen Power from this council. She was a hard-working councillor in the time that she had here, and I know that Sarah started down this road expecting to be working with Helen, but not filling her shoes, but she is still working here, and I wish her every success in what she does going forward. Despite what Councillor Pollock has just said, we have never been against the town centre regeneration. We just feel that it could have been resourced better and handled better with the public. When it comes to shopping, Wokingham will never be able to compete with Bracknell or Reading, and we've not wanted to. However, it's vital to encourage people to come and shop in the town and boost the retail with our trainers. With that in mind, we want to introduce this 2 hours free parking on Saturday, long enough for people to spend time in the town, but short enough to keep a turnover in the car parks. We would have liked to see this scheme extended to Mondays and Fridays too, but as residents are struggling to find parking spaces on weekdays, we felt that we could not expand this idea until there is sufficient parking to meet the needs of this town. It is with regret that parking has been reduced in Wokingham Town Centre. Despite what Councillor Croy says, we would like to see the retention of lollipop ladies and gentlemen in our school areas. This is a battle we've been fighting since 2016 before the Labour Party manifesto. This is where parents would like them. We would like to keep them in areas where parents still want them. An automated crossing cannot replace the reassurance of a human being that is in locations where we have multiple schools and busy traffic. Lollipop ladies are much more cost effective than a crossing anyway. I also feel that we have not done enough to make Wokingham as a town more suitable for people with disabilities. I hope that this council will learn that we have to do more to meet that need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased to see that roads are at the top of everybody's agenda in their speeches, and I'd also like to welcome Sarah to the council. Just to pick up firstly Sarah's point about the parking and loading issues that are being experienced by Redibus. I do understand that, and I particularly understand the fact that it's difficult to pick people up when you don't know where you're going to be stopping. The issue with allocating a bus stop in the town centre is it then means that the periods when the bus is not using it, no disabled residents can use it either, which then means that we restrict the amount of disabled resident parking. So what I'm doing is talking to officers to try and find a dedicated space for Redibus that is not one of the disabled spaces in the town centre and gives an extra space. So that's a substantive matter. To carry on with the rest of the comments on the budget, I think there's probably another black hole in Lindsay's budget. The parking income of £1 for the first hour actually generates £750,000 a year of revenue. I don't see that reduction in the figures that the Lib Dems produced. Yes, he said it for the whole week. The second thing is that £100,000 for pavement repairs is actually already in the budget, so I thank you for supporting that bit of the budget. Thirdly, Twyford Library. Libraries are close to my heart. I was deeply involved in the Twyford Library proposals, and I would like to see Twyford Library built. However, my recollection of the costs when I was involved in libraries was 1.1 million. So you've only actually put 400,000 in the budget.
Look at the second year, it says 600.
600 in year 2? Was that in there? Okay, I thought. So I presume you were going to be borrowing that?
Right. In fact, if you look at it, it reduces the reserves if you look around.
Okay, so you're reducing the reserves. Ready reserves to build something.
It's still a high reserve that we've got at the moment.
So thirdly, there is no mention of a dedicated early CPE officer in your budget, despite the fact you promised one in your leaflet, I believe. So I don't know where that's gone. Does that mean that that's off the table again? And finally, I'm interested in the comments about repairs being done to roads in Liberal Democrat councils' areas. I've been very interested to see how the road repair process has worked out. We actually scientifically analyse every road and are doing the roads that are most easy to do and also the ones that are most damaged. So yet again, we find that Liberals are claiming credit for things which are actually decided by machine and nothing to do with them whatsoever.
Thank you. 5.
I'll try and be brighter next time then. You've asked for it.
Watch out.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Sarah on the wonderful triumph in Evidence by election. And I'd also, as I think we all do, like to thank Helen Power for all the work that she did in increasingly trying circumstances for the people of England who deserve councillors who work hard for their electorate, and Helen knew that at this time she just couldn't do that, and that's why she resigned. And I'd like to thank her for all her work. This amendment adds 230,000 to the budget for CAMS. And I don't know how many of you know about CAMS, but it's an essential service for our children and young people. And I've had a pretty sad perspective of CAMS. My fiancée is a GP. Do I hear bad things about CAMS? Because they've got such a long waiting list there, it's almost a year, and they take people who have very children and young people who have very severe mental health problems. And this money, I hope, will, one, bring down that waiting time to be assessed from over a year to about 6 weeks, but also will work with people who need to be supported when they're not as severe as having waited a year, so that you can get in there faster and work with people and spend less working with them and helping them. I have a family member who has been assessed and told by CAMS that he isn't old enough for them to work with him. He's 6. They know he's got a problem, he's got an anxiety problem, but they won't work with him because, well, they haven't got the facilities and they're not sure whether they should at that age. And let's get working with these people and work with these people so that their conditions do not multiply, and we can work with them and cut the costs. That investment will see a reaping of less spend in the long term, and that's what matters. We also have 70,000 going to work with children with special needs. These are often the forgotten kids, but they have the same rights as you and me. The Council has a duty to improve the inclusion agenda for these vulnerable children, preventing their exclusion from school, often because we don't provide the correct care that is needed. We need to support these children as well as we can, so that they have the opportunity to develop their potential to be the best. Thank you.
David.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would like to add my congratulations to Sarah. I'm sure she'll be a great asset to the council and a worthy successor to our friend Sarah. We've discussed the budget proposals with senior officers and we've had it approved by our Section 151 officer. Our amendment provides some much needed funding for several areas of expenditure that has been neglected by the ruling group for many years. We don't intend to make any change to the increase in the council tax already proposed in the budget. We're only sorry that we're not able to provide more money for residents, but government cuts over the last few years make this impossible. Health Watch is a group of mainly volunteers who act as independent champions for people who use healthcare services in the borough. They do an excellent job, and their budget should never have been frozen, and it shouldn't have been cut this year. Cuts to the budget have been forced through despite the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee appearing to be against any cuts. I therefore hope that Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee members will ensure that their colleagues support this proposal to reinstate and increase the Health Watch budget. I'll just deal with a couple of the comments. Anthony and Norman, I think you're scaremongering. To say that there won't be any schools built absolutely crazy. Chris, there is no hole in the 2019-20 budget proposals.
May I make a point of personal explanation? The number I gave was over the next 3 years. There is a over £2 million hole in your budget over the next 2 years. Sorry, 3 years.
Those are forecasts that are put in for properties that you haven't even bought yet. So I'm surprised that you're pushing that. And this is definitely not a stunt. And I'm sure if you look carefully at the amendment, there are so many things there that you and your colleagues could support. And we really hope that you can support us tonight. Our schools are crying out for support from this council to help them improve inclusion and reduce the time taken for CAMS assessment. How can 9 to 12 months for an assessment be acceptable? It isn't. Our amendment brings the assessment time down to a maximum of 6 weeks, half a term instead of a whole school year. The long-term effects of early intervention that our amendment produces could save this council hundreds of thousands of pounds in the coming years. I really do urge all councillors to look at the amendments carefully, consider them and vote in favour of them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's interesting, isn't it, to hear the opposition when they talk about their numbers. Councillor Smith is right, there is a hole in their numbers, quite a big one. But it's quite interesting when you actually look at what they've actually said. They would actually scale back Optilis. Optilis has delivered about £3 million saving to this authority over the time it's been there. So you'd actually withdraw from that.
They haven't done anything to Optilis.
So high-cost placements. Only this week we've had a high-cost placement come into this council that's in excess of £200,000. These things happen, and you haven't costed anything. You're talking about new homes. You're going to build 1 and 2 bedroom bungalows. Fantastic. Where? You neglect to go on the detail. The expenditure, as you say, for the next 2 to 3 years is uncosted, and Councillor Croy is absolutely right. This is a stunt. It is completely without foundation. Some of the areas have merits, but as Keith quite rightly said, when you take into account the car parking in Woodley, they're full on a Saturday. What's the point of actually reducing your revenue that you can't actually redeploy to other council services when you've already filled up your car park? It makes no sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, I now intend to take this to a vote. It would have to be a named vote because it is on the MTFE, which has got to be so. Sorry? Yes, well, you requested. It's got to be anyway,
Yes.
chaps, whether you request it or not. Okay, so.
Councillor Orty?
Against the amendment.
Councillor Baker?
Against the amendment.
Councillor Barr?
Against.
Blumenthal? Against. Barron?
Against.
Councillor Burgess?
Abstain.
Councillor Chen? Against. Councillor Clark? Against. Councillor Cowan?
For.
Councillor Croy?
Abstain.
Councillor Zielinski?
Against.
Councillor Doran?
Abstain.
Councillor Ferris?
For.
Councillor Grant?
Against.
Councillor Kate Haynes? Against. Councillor Mike Haynes?
Against.
Councillor Hayden Taylor? Against. Councillor Halsall?
Against.
Councillor Hare?
For.
Councillor Ellis Island?
Against.
Councillor Hobbs? Against. Councillor Alton?
Against.
Councillor Halsworth?
Against.
Councillor Jarvis?
Against.
Councillor Jones?
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen?
Against.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen?
Against.
Councillor Kaiser?
Same.
Councillor Kerr? For. Councillor King? Councillor King? Against.
Oh.
Councillor Lloyd?
Against.
Councillor Lee Sumner?
Against.
Councillor Lyle?
Against.
Councillor Murphy?
Again.
Councillor Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Pitt.
For.
Councillor Pollock.
Against.
Councillor Richards.
Against.
Councillor Ross.
Against.
Councillor Sargent.
Against.
Councillor Imogen, Shepherd's Road.
For.
Councillor Michelle, Shepherd's Road.
For.
Councillor Smith, Bristol.
Against.
Councillor Weeks.
Against.
And Councillor Hughes.
Against.
Thank you. That amendment has fallen. So we go back to the original motion, and all those that put their hands up, we will start asking you to speak on the amendment. Sorry, on the motion. Okay. Claire. Rachel, vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I would like to thank the officers for the many hours of hard work that have gone into producing these papers. I'm sure the executive has been as assiduous in reading these papers as they were with the council tax reduction scheme last month. What stares you in the face when reading these documents is that the council faces an ever more difficult task when setting its budget. Thanks to austerity, this council's expenditure has fallen by 34% since 2010. That's 34% in real terms. Over a third of its expenditure budget gone. And as always, the effects of these cuts fall on those who can least afford to pay the price. Disabled people, older people, people with mental health issues, people with addiction problems, people in insecure, low-paid jobs, homeless people, and even children. The last Labour government lifted 1 million children out of poverty. Under the Conservatives, child poverty is rising. A report out just this week warns that the UK is on course for record levels of child poverty. It's utterly shameful. But it's because the Conservative Party take from vulnerable people with one hand and dish out tax cuts to wealthy people with the other. And the cuts we see in this council's budget are a key part of the havoc this party is wreaking on our communities. We hear that the financial pressure is often demand-led, as if we should shrug our shoulders and say, what can we do? But make no mistake, this is a vicious circle fueled by austerity. To take children's services as an example, if we provide services on the cheap by cutting school funding, by cutting early intervention services, slashing police numbers, and reducing health service budgets, is it any wonder that this contributes to a massive surge in the number of children needing child protection plans? We must protect our children and other vulnerable groups, and the policy of Conservative austerity over the last nearly 9 years seems to be doing the opposite. And what of the financial sustainability of this council? It's facing financial pressures like never before. Most worryingly, perhaps, is the sharp drop in the general reserve this year, a fall of 38% to 5.6 million that puts the council below the recommended level of 6.1 million. The predictions show that the general fund will recover in 2020, but with a pattern emerging of annual overspends and a large number of budget lines where no inflation has been included whatsoever, is this really realistic? I'm not convinced. It's not just the general reserve that looks precarious. Many of the council's other reserves show a marked fall between 2018 and 2022. It just doesn't seem sustainable. Despite what the government say about austerity being over, it clearly grinds on, and here we have proof. As well as these worrying details, the financial plan states in black and white that the risks facing the council's finances include the implications of future years of austerity and further grant reductions. Austerity is far from over. I'm left wondering how much damage the Conservative Party can do to our country and our community. How much havoc will they wreak in ordinary people's lives before they realise that austerity must end?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following my recent visits on Tuesday of this week to all our regeneration areas, I felt it time to update you all. Peach Place is progressing well towards most units being opened this spring. Currently we've announced Scales Bakery, Waterstones Bookshops, Leafy Elephant, a craft gin bar and Sit and Sip, a craft beer operation where you can taste and stay or taste and take away. In addition, we've been delighted to welcome Blue Orchid Bakery, who will be providing delicious cakes and opportunity for afternoon tea. Cook, the upmarket frozen food supplier, who are due to open on Rose Street in early March, and plus, of course, Beyond the Download for those vinyl record buffs. In the run-up to opening, we will soon be announcing another 7 tenants that are currently in the hands of our solicitors, and we're also in conversation with 2 high street fashion operators as well. Shoot End car park out here. We'll see more changes from next week with double yellow lines being painted along Biscoe Way, the new road leading through from Shoot End to Elms Field and Earl Crescent. The new road around the park. Now, we will be able to find out more about those and why we chose those new names in the next edition of the Borough News. We'll also be publishing details about when they will open very soon. Now, down at Elms Field, work is progressing very well, as I found on my visit on Tuesday, viewing all from the roof of the new Premier Inn. All 96 bedrooms are now progressing very well, and the triple glazing is going in. Premier Inn should be handed over this summer. Aldi will be handed over for the fit out in the next couple of weeks, and is looking very good, with a new car park coming on at a pace. Aldi are already recruiting for staff, I'm pleased to say, in the local area. Everyman Cinema will be handed over for the fit out later this year. Lastly, I'm delighted with the progress of the new town park and its enlarged children's play area, and this has been designed to PIPA standards for inclusive and accessible play, and this is set to be opened this summer. We are currently in final discussions with Wokingham Town Council, who are set to take over the management of the new park, reflecting our commitment that it becomes a true focus for the town and its residents for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Conservatives propose increasing the reserve to 9.9 million. This is partly based on the minimum suggested by Whitehall and partly on the local assessment of risks. Unfortunately, though, the local Tories have simply assumed that a whole range of risks could occur within a single financial year, rather than taking a more risk management approach whereby it is recognised that such a range of risks materialising simultaneously is unrealistic. The Tories' approach is contrary to HM Treasury's risk management principles. This has led the Tories to put far too much aside into the General Reserve, and they are placed on safe but low savings deposits. Some of this excessive fund would be better used in working properly for residents by either paying off some higher cost loans, or better still in funding WHL, and you're right, Alistair, it is WHL, building programme, providing homes for residents and a substantial return via both private sales and ongoing rents. The size of the proposed too high a reserve comes at a cost to residents and should be reduced to about 8.7 for 2019-20. Interestingly, I've been unable to find in the budget the £210,000 allocated by Whitehall to every unitary authority to be ring-fenced specifically for Brexit contingencies in 2019-20, along with the £210,000 for this current financial year. Perhaps our Northern Parish MP has had a quiet word to say not to bother, since having made such a hash of a non-plan for Brexit, she's finally going to have to admit that we're not actually leaving. What a waste of 2 years and 8 months, driven by the desire to keep the two wings of Conservatives in one party, and yes, the local Tories here have had a hand in that shambles, which has meant taking their eyes off everything that needs fixing, both nationally and in this borough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We recognise how important highways are to the residents and businesses of our borough, and we're working to reduce congestion and continue to improve the maintenance of our roads. To that end, we're investing significant sums on the provisions of new highways to reduce congestion. Following receipt of a £6.62 million grant last year towards the Winnish Relief Road Phase 2, on Wednesday we announced that we had been successful in obtaining a further £5 million grant from the Local Enterprise Partnership, a council business forum promoting economic development and coordinating transport programmes throughout Berkshire towards the Eastern Gateway section of South Woking Distributor Road. Planning permission for this road was granted in April 18 and it's designed to open in 2020. I'm also meeting Highways England shortly with Sir John Redwood to discuss issues around congestion on the A39M, which is affecting many residents. We recognise the issues faced by residents with increasing congestion and I will continue to lobby government for measures and funding to further improve the situation. We also continue to invest in our strategic cycle network and park and ride schemes. We are committed to improved highways maintenance. In addition to the annual capital budget of £2.28 million for highway structural maintenance, we recently received a one-off grant of £1.2 million from the Conservative government, which we've allocated to additional road resurfacing throughout the borough to be spent immediately. We're implementing a new highways contract this year which will improve value for money and also enable residents to see what is happening more clearly in their local areas. We've also just launched a Highways Facebook page to communicate better with our residents and provide them with the information needed to plan their journeys. Recently, we've made more information about road maintenance public on our website, so you can see where taxpayers' money is being spent and where spend is being prioritised in the future. I will continue to explore opportunities with officers and our MPs to obtain more funding for much needed road repairs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thanks to all the council officers involved in drawing this all up. I can see it was a lot of work. The first thing I should say, really, and I think it's the only thing in my speech you're probably going to like, I recognise this council has very little room for manoeuvre. This is a national funding issue, not a local one, really. We can tinker around the edges, as the Lib Dems were talking about, but we can't do a lot unless something happens nationally. I was struck when I read this medium-term financial plan how it clearly shows the difference of opinion between the government and local government on the state of the nation's finances. The government paints a pretty picture of never-ending growth and increasing budgets all around. But this document entirely disagrees with that. The Conservative Party has been in government and running a deliberate austerity programme for 9 years now. This should have been long enough to complete whatever task austerity was supposedly meant to address. Winston Churchill's government took 5 years to win a world war from a standing start. Clement Attlee's government took 6 years to build the welfare state, set up the NHS and nationalise our public utilities, all in the rubble of a war-ravaged economy. In the 9th year of Tory austerity, what has been achieved? The national debt has more than doubled. The bottom and middle of society are paying more in taxes and getting less for them. The poor and vulnerable are suffering more now than they have since the 1930s. But it's all okay, don't panic, austerity's over. So Theresa May told us last year. However, this document, which can't talk in the politically biased language of a Prime Minister, says that that possibility isn't even on the horizon. As deliberate austerity continues, demand increases. As universal credit rolls out, demand increases. As population goes up, demand increases. As people live longer, demand increases. This is a national crisis and requires a national solution. The Conservative group that has run this council for many years has had a golden opportunity to fight this ongoing austerity by influencing one of our local MPs who just happens to be the Prime Minister. Why have you not done it? If you've made the case, why has nothing changed? If you have the ear of the Prime Minister and can't make a difference, what's the point of you? Austerity could have been confined to the dustbin of history today. And don't tell me the money isn't available. Tens of billions in tax cuts to corporations, light touch tax regimes for the filthy rich, and £4 billion found out of seemingly nowhere to prepare for a completely avoidable no-deal Brexit.
Agree with you there.
The Local Government Association says there's a £3 billion funding gap in local government finance, so that covers that easily. There's plenty of cash, and an injection of new money from central government is the only way to protect the vital services which children, families, the old and disabled depend on. Okay. There are now councils who literally can't afford to grip the roads in winter. That's not this council, not yet anyway, but it will be if the assault of austerity doesn't end. If you have any influence, start using it.
Thank you.
I believe we're approaching the limit of 1.5 hours. I would like to propose an extension for this agenda item only for 30 minutes, since it's such an important agenda item.
Those in favour, show please. This is extended for half an hour. Harry Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst Wokingham Borough Council has a wider duty to promote the health and well-being of residents, Adult Social Care has a particular focus on delivering services to those whose safety and independence is most at risk. Older people, those with disabilities and those with mental illness. These services are often delivered in partnership with National Health Service. The Adult Social Care Service within Wokingham Borough will face some demand-driven challenges in the coming year, 2019-2020. And to meet these challenges, I'm pleased to announce a fair budget for Wokingham Borough Adult Social Care Services. The budget has been set to meet the expected increase in demand from our residents. The total adjusted baseline adult social care budget for 2019-2020 is just over 45 million. Considering the expected growth in demand, this figure is expected to be 46.7 million. I am further pleased to announce an additional 1 million in that budget to meet the extra demand in adult social care. In order to improve our services, the Director of Adult Social Services and I have set up an improvements board. This board has been established to identify opportunities to continuously improve our services and the cost effectiveness of our current services. We will make full use of modern technology to assist our resources and personnel to deliver the efficient and effective service to our residents. It is essential that we continue to review how we deliver our service and seek opportunities to sustain and improve the quality and safety of the service, which in turn will naturally accrue cost savings in the long run. I can also confirm that I have a very dedicated workforce in the adult social care, health and wellbeing outfit. Mr. Mayor, it is through these dedicated members of staff that we will meet the social care needs of our residents in 2019-2020. Mr. Mayor, at the end of the day, a great borough such as ours will not only be judged by celebrating how many excellent schools we have, how sustainable economy we have, how businesses thrive in our borough, but we will also be judged on how we treat the most vulnerable, elderly, sick and poor adults in our borough. As such, I will work towards delivering an efficient, safe, economic adult social care service for the residents of our borough. Thank you.
Thank you. David Hare.
Thank you. Looking at the adult services budget, there are a few things that I was concerned about. One is the rather woolly and unspecific vision the council seems to have for services includes much statutory work and deals with the vulnerable of our society. As was mentioned in the amendment, we also need to review, not do anything but review the work of Optalis. They are doing an excellent job at the moment. They are operating on a very fine margin of profit when their spend is observed. We need to review and ensure that that is the best that we can get for them who are doing a good job. I'm also concerned about moving a couple of services to corporate services from health and well-being. It's understandable perhaps with housing, but moving public health to corporate services to me doesn't make any sense. It's an essential part of adult services, of social services, and it would be all too easily lost in corporate services. I've got a friend who's been a friend for many years who used to be a GP in this area, and he said that it was very clear that the biggest advances in medicine have been through our public health services, improved conditions with the water, with the air we breathe, with working conditions and so on. And that was more than all the medical advances that doctors have implemented. As Councillor McGee-Sumner says, we also need to work with and for these vulnerable residents. I would like to appeal to the nature of all councillors, because I see I believe it's a funding cut of about £123,000 for redesign of services. And I think that must be a forced economy. All the savings in social service spend often have a knock-on effect elsewhere. Probably a negative effect on the health service, but in the end this comes back to the council and increases rather than decreases our spend. And in children's services, we want, working with Carol Carmis and her excellent new team, to start to provide the specialist services that we now buy from external and so very expensive outside councils. We want to bring them internal. And so we must go on and work for and with the vulnerable of our society for the best for them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to start by saying thank you to Graham and his team for putting together such a comprehensive pack. I appreciate recently, in the last meeting in particular, that members have not always been able to wade through all of the numbers presented to them. So in a spirit of cross-party cooperation, I'd like to draw members' attention to page 25 of the medium-term financial plan. But on page 25, I'll give a couple of seconds, on page 25, it says we're forecast to end the year with a general reserve of 5.6 million, which might seem like a lot, except the recommended level of reserves for our authority is 6.1 million. And this is a worrying position to be in. But don't just take my word for it, ask the director. He also said that the forecast level was worrying. While we were expecting the general reserve to fall, we were not expecting it to fall by an additional 1.8 million annual budget. When you consider the prior year also saw an over-budget fall in reserves, we have what looks horribly like a pattern of optimistic budgeting. This budgeting history will forgive me if the forecast recovery of our reserves next year does not fill me full of confidence. In this environment, I welcome the government's decision not to make us pay for the privilege of existing. And not this year anyway. The current sham in Westminster are so dysfunctional that who knows what cudgel they will take to our finances next year, as I think Julie alluded to. And see, we are not in this predicament by accident. And we're not even in this predicament because this council has overspent. And we're not in this predicament because adults have a temerity to get old and require care, or that young families struggle to need support. And we are not in this predicament because carers receive too high an allowance. And we're not in this predicament because our school crossing patrols were too expensive. We are in this predicament because the Tory party hates local government and has a long-term plan to undermine its very existence. On 3 occasions in recent years, this council has accepted one-off funds from central government. The problem with a bung is that funds are offered to persuade the council to do something in the short term, which is against our interests in the long term. We now found ourselves £6 million per year, every year, forever, short of the revenue which we would have had the government and council be honest with evidence. But no, we have the great Tory lie, the lie that you can cut taxes and cut spending and there'll be no consequences for public services. It was a lie then and it's a lie now. Very, very soon we will exist only to provide statutory services, and even these will be little more than contract awarding exercises that remove any semblance of local democratic choice from our residents. Meanwhile, the burden of taxation has moved from a more fair and progressive taxation to a most regressive of taxes, council tax. And councils like ours are forced to become Trump-like property speculators in order to try and survive. And I will be voting against this budget. Thank you.
Okay, Pauline Helen-Simon.
By far the greatest amount of money this council spends is on vulnerable people, the elderly, disabled adults and defenceless children. This year's budget sees a growth in children's services. There are 2 major reasons for this. Firstly, more children are coming to us for assessment and care. There are a number of reasons for this. Among these are the fact that people are becoming better at spotting where there are problems, teachers and the police, for example. There are, of course, more children coming into the borough. In addition, 2 years ago, the government passed legislation making us responsible for youngsters up to the age of 25 rather than 18, as it was before. All this means more children, and more children need more social workers. In addition, we have 133 children with special needs who are educated outside the borough. This is not only disruptive for them with long journey times, but also is very expensive in the cost of transporting them there, and often the higher costs of needing to use private placements, because it can cost an average of up to 4 times as much for a special needs child to be educated outside the borough rather than in one of our own placements. We are addressing this by planning more placements within the borough. For example, 50 more places at the outstanding Addington Special Needs School, extending a number of places at Foundry College, and looking to open another special needs school in Wokingham Borough if possible. All these things are short to medium term plans in terms of bringing them about, and transport costs and school places will continue to need paying for in the meantime. And for some children it will be too disruptive to move them, although in the future fewer will go out of the borough. But ultimately this will save a good deal of money. I'm continuing to work with officers to obtain the best value for money in all our children's services. But I'm pleased to propose this growth because we are protecting more children, and this is very much in line with one of our most important council priorities, protecting vulnerable people. But I would very much worry about the impact on our ability to do this were the opposition's expensive proposals ever to come to fruition. That would be a very sad culture change indeed. One interesting figure is that the last and the only time the Liberal Democrats were in power, they left, guess how much? Chris, take note, a 2.5 million overspend.
Sarah Kerr.
Point of order. That was nowhere near the figure. I was actually nearer on that council at the time. I think that the period is incorrect.
So was I. I had to some of the mess.
We've done a check recently.
I'm not quite sure how the Lib Dems could have left so much in debt because they were only in power for 8 months, so they must have been very different. They must have been very different. Anyhow, I note that part of the rise in our council tax includes funding for the police service. Complaints about vandalism and other antisocial behaviour has never been so bad, from the damage to the Wokingham Town Centre Christmas tree to the vandalism in our parks and subways. I often hear residents complaining that it's been a very long time since they've seen policemen walking around. This is what's missing, visible boots on the pavement policing. Those intent on causing trouble and doing damage currently have no fear of getting caught in our towns. I think it would be happier to pay this extra money if we were assured that the money was going to go directly to our frontline policing in Woking Borough. What visible and tangible differences are we going to see from the rise in pavements? Moving on to what we can have more control of, I'd very much like to see Woking Town Centre do more to support alternative methods of transport than cars, so it can be easily enjoyed by all our residents. I really hope that some of that 380,000 Woking Town Centre Environment Improvement Scheme is used to build the very much needed and properly accessible bus stops in Broad Street, which should include the standard raised curbs for prams, wheelchairs and mobility scooters so they can access the buses too. At the moment, I feel that Wokingham's town centre was built to aesthetically please the physically able, even when those who are less able to experience to contribute to able are expected to contribute to paying for it. As Sarah mentioned earlier, we also desperately need the allocated point somewhere near the town centre for the community transport buses. This must have space for a tail lift and appropriate ramps and curbs. I hope that it will be a priority. Also, some paint on the markings to just paint or other markings that distinguish our disabled bays and the loading bays in the marketplace from the rest of the pavement. This is clearly being called for by many people. All of the money being poured into our regeneration, we must have some funds to tackle these smaller outstanding problems that makes the place more viable for everybody to use. Overall, I'd like to see better investments in our schools. I see money going to brand new schools to help them grow, which seems unfair to our existing schools who are not getting the new equipment and investment, despite having students from the new housing areas. I would also like to see more paid into the reserves, as has already been mentioned. We are approaching a period of uncertainty and we need to buffer a better buffer to protect ourselves. To fail to do these things would be a very sad culture indeed, with particular reference to the accessibility issues that I've mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is very disappointing that the Conservative group have used their massive majority on this council to reject the Liberal Democrats' very carefully costed amendment. But it isn't surprising. What we have seen tonight is the Conservative group abusing its dominant position of power to the detriment of so many residents, especially vulnerable residents and local businesses. And Julian, you said that we were cutting Optilis. We never said that in our amendment, so I think you should withdraw it. We are concerned about the high levels of debt at the council. That's why Lindsay wrote to the Secretary of State. Debt has been fast approaching 600 million. Our amendment would have helped to bring down debt to under 500 million, but you couldn't support it. These are uncertain economic times. Commercial property prices are at best stagnant, at worst falling. Smarter investors have been getting out of commercial property for a number of years. Retail sales are challenging, to say the least, and yet the Conservatives have given permission for 3 of them, plus an officer, to borrow money to invest in commercial property. 10 to 15 years ago, it might have been a good thing to do, but you didn't do it then. Doing it now is highly risky. Reserves have been allowed to drop from 9.1 million in 2017-18 to around 5.6 million 2018-19. Government guidelines suggest that about 8.5 million for a council of our size is reasonable. Your budget has reserve levels at 9.9 million. We understand and agree that the levels of reserves have to be restored, especially as we can't expect a good financial deal from the government next year. But we don't have to be at the level where you have put the reserves. Had you accepted our amendment, the council's reserves would have stood at £8.7 million, within your government's recommended levels. This is the Lib Dems being cautious with their resources and financially responsible. We're pleased that the weekly bean collections are going to continue. We're pleased that food waste is to be collected from April. We have campaigned for this for many years. We're disappointed, however, that an opportunity was missed to introduce the curbside collection of glass when our fleet of bin lorries were recently renewed. As I've said before, so many other authorities do it, why can't we?
We need to completely rework the Borough Design Guide, or at least amend it to match realities, and we need to change it from a Borough Design Guide to a Borough Design Regulations so it actually will be enforceable in appeals, because as a guide, it's only advisory. WBC needs to do what Cambridge has done to force developers to put in roads and cycle paths before the houses are built to provide sustainable transport for the works and have a place for the construction lorries and works vehicles to park rather than on existing streets in the surrounding areas. This will lessen the impact of present residents to the new housing. Some of the changes that are needed to the guide include requirements to increase the number of parking spaces per dwelling, because Woking Borough Councils is in the top 10 at the local authorities for car per dwelling. And everybody in planning knows that I always love to talk about having at least 2 spaces per dwelling. A few years ago, Woking had 2.43 automobiles per dwelling, which doesn't include works vans. Part of the reason for this is high house prices and rental prices, which force children to continue living with their parents into their 20s and 30s. And they require a car to get to work because we have meager bus and train service on most of our lines. A few years ago, we were promised that there would be a working group to rewrite the Borough Design Guide. But unfortunately, the instigator of that was not re-elected last May. And so nothing has happened. One thing to reduce residents' frustration is that all roadwork projects should be completed individually before moving on to the next project. As I said in the executive, and Pauline agreed possibly, a perfect example is the Winnish Relief Road, which includes the NWDR roundabout as part of the project. It would be better to finish the relief road so residents can actually use it, especially since construction of the NWDR is not scheduled to start for a year after the completion of the relief road, and therefore you have a roundabout for no particularly good reason. If WBC really wants to take sustainable transport seriously by providing cycle lanes, they should not be shared on the pavement. Shared pavement lanes are fine for children, but if you want adults to use bicycles, you need to have them on separated, safe cycle paths and better and frequent mass transit buses. Finally, we need to coordinate roadworks projects so residents don't feel like they're living in a thoroughly congested borough rather than the leafy market town they moved to. And lastly, if we have £210,000 for Brexit, couldn't we at least get a people's vote instead and choose between the Duff deal and whether we want to stay in the EU? Thank you.
Members, before we go forward, there's some very important things we've got to decide this meeting. Would members be in favour of extending the meeting by half an hour? All those in favour show. That is carried. Thank you. Okay, Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had an interesting evening tonight. We've had Liberal Democrats saying the reserves are too high and then saying they're too low. We've had issues around risk, but the Liberal Democrats don't seem to have read pages 67 and 68, and certainly don't seem to have read the CFO report, which I do recommend to everyone. If you really want to understand all the risks and all the issues and all the problems and all the challenges, that's where you start.
Finances were checked, Anthony?
You did you?
By company.
It doesn't come across.
The service officers.
It didn't come across in your budget proposals, and it hasn't come across in your speeches either.
It's in the table.
Anyway. You commented about the vulnerable, and you made long conversations and long proposals and long discussions, and I don't think there's anybody in this chamber who doesn't want to make sure that those who are vulnerable and necessary and dependent and need to be dependent on the council are provided for as much as they can. And Pauline was made a speech about the number of looked after children we have to take in, and we've put a lot of extra money into social workers to deal with that, and Harry's got a lot of extra money to deal with the elderly residents and those who run out of money and those who are in the over 80, 85 age range. So we are putting more money into supporting the vulnerable. Optimus is doing a damn good job and has improved the quality of services that under its new management team. And as Pauline said, we're aiming to bring people back who are now in out-of-borough placements by expanding Addington and other provisions. So those things that were being asked for, we're already doing. The other issue, we seem to have this, we weren't responsible for austerity. Gordon Brown wasn't a Labour Party politician. He wasn't Labour Chancellor for I don't know how many years. And he didn't try and abolish, or claim he was going to abolish boom and bust, but he abolished the boom instead. So we just had bust. And you talk long and hard about it.
You're encouraging to address me rather.
Fine, yes, you're a better person to address than our Labour Party colleagues, I'm sure. But they go on about austerity, and yet they're the people who created it because they couldn't manage the government's funds. And we've got this new chap called Corbyn who seems to be even worse than Gordon Brown. And I dread to think where we will all end up. Probably all dependent on the council and living in homes and living in one-bedroom flats. The budget that we've got is sad. The increase I've just had today, I think it was, that the government collected an extra £5 billion in January. So government revenues and resources are being restored, and that will have its own impact on the end of austerity. The Thames Valley Police budget is up 13%, and this is a sound, affordable, prudent budget, and I urge everyone here to vote for it.
Thank you. Julian, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In light of the hour, I'll sort of be brief. I'm all for working with cross-party to look at our finances, and I know that both opposition parties get to meet with Graham on a monthly basis, so I'm not quite sure why they feel that we're not sort of giving them the information in good time. They can ask for it at any time they need. Councillor Burgess is right. The Labour Party did leave us in austerity, and we are still in austerity. This council has a very good track record of working with the punches that we're given. We keep getting our budget cuts, we deliver our services, we look after our vulnerable, we will continue to do that, we will continue to build affordable homes, and we'll continue to look after people of this borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, we've got 4 votes, four papers to vote on, which form the financial part of the report. The 4th one will be a named vote, so I will read out each one, and if you can all vote as you feel necessary. Okay, the first one is 89.1, which is the Housing Revenue Account Budget 2019, 2020 through to 2022. All those in favour? That is carried. 89.2, which is the Capital Programme Strategy 2019 through to 2022. All those in favour? That is carried.
We're against.
No, sorry. Those against? Thank you. That is carried. 89.3, Treasury Management Strategy. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? That is carried. Right, the medium-term financial plan, which is 89.4, as amended. You've all got that amendment, I believe. Okay, this is a name vote.
Okay. Councillor Orting.
4.
Councillor Baker.
4.
Councillor Bob.
4.
Councillor Blumenthal. 4. Councillor Barron.
4.
Councillor Burgess.
Against.
Councillor Chen. 4. Councillor Clark. 4. Councillor Cowan.
Against.
Councillor Croy.
Against.
Councillor Zielinski.
4.
Councillor Durant.
Against.
Councillor Ferris.
Against.
Councillor Anderson.
4.
Councillor Kate Haynes.
4.
Councillor Mike Haynes.
4.
Councillor Hayden Taylor. 4. Councillor Halsall.
4.
Councillor Hare.
Against.
Councillor Hellier Simon.
4.
Councillor Holmes. Councillor Holton.
4.
Councillor Holsworth.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Jones.
Against?
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
4.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
4.
Councillor Kaiser.
Same.
Councillor Kerr.
Against.
Councillor King.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Lloyd. 4. Councillor McGee Sumner.
4.
Councillor Meyer.
4.
Councillor Murphy.
4.
Councillor Monroe.
4.
Councillor Fitter.
Against.
Councillor Pollock.
4.
Councillor Richards.
4.
Councillor Ross.
4.
Councillor Sargent.
4.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd Dubay.
Against.
Councillor Michelle Shepherd Dubay.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Weeks.
4.
Councillor Lewis.
Okay. That is carried, and that concludes that section of the meeting. Moving on to number 90, which is the Treasury Management Mid-Term Report 2018-2019. Right, who's proposing this? Anthony Clark. Who's seconding it?
I'll just briefly, I won't go into too much detail. I usually make my joke at this point that anyone suffering from insomnia should read this report. You'll be asleep within page 5. But it is an important report, and I have to disagree with Lindsay. I believe this side of the capital programme effectively shows how it is soundly financed and soundly funded. But we'll disagree, and we'll continue to debate that issue.
Time will tell, young man.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Time will tell. Anyway, I also...
You won't be empowered, I'm told.
I would draw your attention, I think, particularly to the fact that we have significant investments, which I think, if I'm getting right, on page 203 shows we have 159 million of investments. 89 million are invested with other local authorities and some other bits and pieces as well. So again, that contributes to our ability to finance the capital programme that we have, which I'm going to describe as modest in light of the housing numbers and the housing starts that we have had to take. So I think, given the hour, I will talk no further and say I propose this report and I ask you to vote for it.
Chris Smith, do you wish to say anything?
I'll hold until after.
Okay. Who wishes to speak on this matter? Looks like you're on, Chris.
I will be very, very quick. As Chairman of Audit, I've asked for kind of certain improvements to be made to this report going forward to aid usability. Hopefully this time next year there'll be a much more easily understandable report for people who are not accountants or finance people. That will not be a cure for insomnia, as Anthony seems to believe it is. I personally find it fascinating.
Thank you very much. Okay, in that case, as nobody else wishes to vote on this matter, to speak on this matter, can we go straight to the vote? So those all in favour? Those against? Those who wish to abstain? That is carried, thank you. Okay, item 91, Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2019-2020. Who is the proposer? Julian, do you wish to speak? Julian, do you have a second?
I do have a seconder. Okay. Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may. The Council Tax Reduction Scheme for 1920. We fully admit that we took our eye off the ball on this one. We didn't review it in the same way that we would have done in previous years. So we have listened, we have taken on board all the comments. It may not be a perfect solution to everything we want to do today, but I think it is a better solution than you'll find with most of our neighbouring authorities. What we propose to do going forward is to actually set up a party later on in the year to look at this well in advance of next year, so we can make sure that we are as good as we can possibly be. And I've spoken to Lindsay about this, but it will be a cross-party panel that we can look at this to make sure that we are as good as we can be and that we can learn the lessons and make sure that we offer the services that are a balanced budget for our residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Pauline, do you wish to speak?
I'll reserve.
All those wishing to speak, show. Lindsay.
Thank you. It is good to have an acknowledgement that somebody does something wrong, and I think I've commented to Julian to say it was quite brave to do so. The proposals you've got here tonight are an improvement. We do have an amendment, which we have here, which we can pass around. And my concern, as I mentioned in the first time this was presented, is that we have some of the most vulnerable people here, and to try and get even 22 or 40% or whatever level of discounted council tax off some people will be very difficult, particularly if they have difficulty to pay. As it is one of those situations where if a council pursues somebody for council tax, there is taking the court. And if we take somebody to court because they can't afford to pay council tax, we end up going all the costs dealing with it, and then we have all the problems we have with evicting someone, and then all those costs of trying to find them a home again because they've got children and the like. And we think that is not the best way to do. So we are proposing what we call a safety net fund, and we're proposing a sum of up to £100,000, which only represents 0.1% of our council tax income of over 100 million, to support the vulnerable residents who may not be able to afford even the reduced council tax. And I very much hope you can support this part because we think it could cost us a lot of money, and there is more people, Anthony, there are more people in this level than you thought there was, and I think that we need to do something for them, and hence our proposal.
You have your amendment, do you?
Yes. Have a seconder here.
I'm seconding.
Okay. If a member wants some time to think about this.
No, I think we're okay. Personally, I don't think this is actually necessary because effectively it gets swept up into the council tax collection fund. But in order to make business tonight, I'm prepared to accept it on the basis that it's an in extremis fund. And we'll use it if we have to, but I don't think...
It?
Sorry?
Yes.
You're
I'm
accepting
accepting
it.
it,
Thank you.
yes. I'm accepting it as an extremist fund, not something that
Yes,
I'm hoping we don't have to spend it, is what I'm really trying to say.
People genuinely not able to pay.
Explain it to
Thank
me.
you.
Sorry, we're accepting it, we're accepting it, but I'm treating it as an in extremis fund, which because the change that we are proposing from the last scheme is only for the most vulnerable, about 50 pence a week. I don't expect us to need it, but I'm prepared to accept it as an in extremis fund to make business tonight.
Are you prepared to accept that as a proposal of this?
I am. I'm very pleased that we have cross-party support on this, because we feel that there's putting stress of people through unnecessary activity, particularly when it's clear that they can't pay. It's not people who won't pay, it's people who can't pay, and that's what we wanted to do. There are people across the whole range who have great difficulty, and we think that is, and I'm very pleased that you accept this, and I'm willing to accept that, as long as you don't call it ISIS.
Okay, tell me, I'll tell Anthony.
Sorry, I'm a bit deaf tonight.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on it? Back to the main motion. Are we going back? Okay. Chris Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In his introduction, Councillor McGee-Sumner outlined the changes to the scheme, and Councillor McGee-Sumner has also apologised for the distress this has caused to some of our most vulnerable residents. I would like to add my own apologies to our most vulnerable residents for any distress that has been caused over the last 4 weeks. As Chairman of the Audit Committee of this Council, I requested our internal audit services perform a review of the decision-making process for the 1920 scheme. Internal audit's terms of references were to focus on the process and not the end decision. At my request, a cross-party working group was formed to review the internal audit report to ensure all political parties could provide input and suggestions as to how we move forwards. I would like to thank Kelly Withers and her team for pulling together the report so quickly, and also for meeting with this working party shortly before this meeting. The report identified weaknesses in 5 areas: detecting legislative changes, ensuring public consultations are viewed as meaningful, confusion as to timelines and the roles of officers, members and members of the executive, communicating changes to the benefit systems to members as well. These were significant governance failings by members and members of the executive, and of which I, as a member of the ruling party, have my own blame in. During our meeting, the meeting group made suggestions for an action plan that will mitigate these weaknesses. The key change, as Councillor McGee-Sumner has mentioned, is the formation of a cross-party working group, where the suggestion that this could be formed for an existing overview and scrutiny committee or a new kind of bespoke council tax reduction working group to provide oversight from members to the council tax reduction scheme for 2020/2021 and for future years. Other changes have also been suggested to the process for council tax reduction, and these will go to the relevant officers for comments before a finalised report and action plan is circulated to all members, and also as part of audit we will be reviewing this later in the year to make sure that these changes have been implemented effectively, to ensure that what happened this year does not happen again. We will be reviewing these changes and holding both ourselves as members, executive members and officers to account if these changes are not implemented and followed through, although I hope to be supported in the council tax reduction working group in ensuring that this occurs. Again, I would like to thank Kelly and her team and the members of the working group for responding so effectively and quickly to this challenge. And I again apologise to residents for the distress caused. Thank you.
Andy Croy.
Thank you. When these cuts to the incomes of the poorest came before us last month, I blamed the drip of Tory austerity. What I hadn't appreciated was that on top of this thin layer of Tory gruel, there was on this layer of Tory gruel there was actually a very, very thin layer of indifference, and I think frankly incompetence, and I welcome Julian's and Chris's comments acknowledging that. I just can't believe that the executive or even many members read the document. Having said that, I do welcome the U-turn performed by the executive, and I also welcome the fact that the child maintenance tax will be binned, and that the audit committee will look at how it actually came to pass in the first place. On closer examination of the rest of the scheme, one finds there was another change, but this is a welcome change, and this is a change in the carer's allowance disregard. The carer's allowance is a payment of £66 per week given to people who care for others, providing the carer is providing 35 hours of care per week. Of this, we still plan to count 1/3 of the carer's allowance towards the council tax disregard. In effect, we have binned the child maintenance tax, and we've introduced, and you are maintaining, a carer's tax. A tax on people who care for others. So we will be voting against the new scheme. And just a little comment on the amendment. The basis of this scheme is, are you eligible or not? We can make available £5 million or £1 billion. If people aren't eligible to get the discount, they won't get the discount. What we need to be changing is the actual structure of the scheme, and not making available pots of money that won't be available under the current rules of the scheme. If you're going to start with a change, you could perhaps change the carer's allowance to 100% disregard, and I hope that's something that Chris and his committee will look at in the future, rather than what I suspect being suggested.
Thank you.
At our last council meeting, I was shocked and angered that the Conservatives were planning to introduce a child maintenance tax in Woking Borough. I was, of course, I was shocked and angered that the Conservatives were planning to introduce a child maintenance tax in Woking Borough. I was of course pleased that in the end they listened to the Labour group and decided to U-turn on this issue. And I thank the executive for their acknowledgement of that, and also Councillor Smith's
We already proposed it to say a vote against it, you see.
frank comments regarding the audit of the process.
Oh, really?
Can you please allow courtesy to the member to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. However, the fact remains that the benefits of this scheme are being reduced year on year because of ongoing austerity and because the council needs to mitigate against the effects of cost increases due to universal credit. Basically, the council are penalising vulnerable people to propagate their damaging conservative ideology and to fund the increased admin costs of their failing universal credit system. This council tax reduction scheme once helped 1,100 more people than it does now. The help this scheme offers is reducing every year. The changes that remain, for example reducing the savings level from 16k to 4k, will mean it will help even fewer people. Here in the Labour group we were appalled at the inclusion originally of the child maintenance income in the calculations for this scheme, and I'm pleased that the Conservatives have seen sense on this. But have a closer look and there are more issues with the scheme. As we have already heard, why should carers allowance be included at all? Even with the changes proposed, 1/3 of carers allowance will be included as income for the purposes of the scheme. Why are we penalising carers? Is that really what we want to do in this council? I understand the sentiment of the Lib Dem amendment, but this is about the criteria for council tax support. Our residents, especially those in financial difficulty, deserve proper support. The fact is that changes to the scheme over recent years to cope with the demands of austerity and universal credit costs are not warranted, and I cannot support them. Our residents deserve so much better than this.
Thank you. I see no more. Did you want to speak, David? As you second the motion. Julian, did you want to make a run?
No, Mr. Evans.
Okay, so shall we go straight to the vote on this? Are those in favour?
If remembrance is amended.
With the amendment. Sorry. Those against? Okay, those abstaining? That is carried. Thank you. Members, I would like, if possible, to take a vote on reversing the next two items. And the reason for that is that we're getting close to time, and we can always go back to one if we get the timetable agreed quickly. But I do want to get the timetable agreed because it's different from past years. So does anybody object to that? All in favour of me doing that? Okay, thank you. Right.
Mr. Mayor, it was my intention to speak on changes to the Constitution. I hope I will be allowed.
You get to there, Gary? Yes, you will go. Okay. Right, okay, who's going to propose the timetable? Julian, would you like to say something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, in view of the hour, I'm happy to propose the amended timetable as detailed on pages 271 to 272, which I hope will reach agreement with my colleagues.
Seconder? Do you wish to speak? Does anybody wish to speak on this matter?
Briefly.
Briefly.
Very pleased to see a January full council meeting. Thank you. Ruth's not here, so I had to say it for her.
Okay, so if we could go straight to the vote on the timetable of meetings for 2019-2020, all those in favour? That's a full house, right? That's it. Thank you, that's accepted. Okay, so we move now to item 92, which is changes to the Constitution, to be proposed by Julian McGee-Sumner and seconded by Chris Barry. Would you like to speak, Julian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Proposed change in the Constitution is detailed in the agenda. We have had a working party to look at this, so I hope all members will be happy to support the amendments.
Would you like to speak, Chris?
I will assert my right, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all those who wish to speak, please show. Gary Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome the intent of this, and my point will be related to 3.5.4.2, debating the petition at the council meeting, be amended. The first point of allowing the petitioner present the motion at the meeting, I think is very welcome. But the constitutional change then that demands that motion is presented by the petitioner in at least 10 days in advance of the council meeting, which is actually discussing the petition. In my opinion, this makes it impossible for the petitioner to listen to the debate and then form a motion based on the outcome of that debate. It also follows that the ruling Conservative Party will have 10 days to get the ducks in a row. Having made that change, they can now amend that motion instantly, and the motion will only be debated by the proposer and seconder of the amendment along with the petitioner. No one else will speak, they'll just vote. What's very sad about this is that the intention of it was good, but what it's done is put greater constraint on the petitioner, who are residents. They're not savvy people in the Constitution, they're people who come to this council with concerns. And I feel that the additional points we made in here let it down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak specifically, as Councillor Cowan has done, on the proposals how the petitioners are dealt with. I'd particularly like to comment on Councillor Cowan's comments made in his letter to Working Times, and copied to every single councillor. His comments, he complains about the proposed changes, which I believe was proposed by the Liberal Democrat member of the working group, and I understand it's supported by that party. So in his words, the cunning plan was actually put together by a cross-party working group, one which Councillor Cowan was asked to participate in, but chose not to. In essence, the new process is, one,
a point of order, Mr. Chairman. My name was mentioned there. I am guilty of charge, but a point of explanation. I had intended to invite to attend the meeting, but I couldn't attend it, and I gave my apologies, along with my suggested changes, which broadly supported the more democratic proposals from Councillor Andy Croy. My reason for non-attendance were very simple. I had to attend Newbury Hospital very early that morning, the following morning to have a lump removed from my head and 3 more from my back, and I'm waiting the biopsy reports. I will not go into the other extenuating family issues that impacted why I did not attend the meeting, but I will be happy to do so if the Council wishes. The vindictiveness of Councillor Baker is sinking to gutter politics knows no bounds, but it does not surprise me.
Okay, thank you. In essence, the new process is 1, councillor and petition develop a motion, 2, the motion is published, 3, petition debated, 4, motion voted on. We've heard tonight that Councillor Cowan disagrees with this process. Can I take you back onto the previous petition process which he complained about? Last time, he had a motion ready and lodged with Interim Chief Executive before the debate started. I assume he worked with a petitioner to develop this motion. This is exactly the same as what is being proposed. We debated the petition, which is exactly the same in the new proposal. We voted on the motion, again, exactly the same as the new proposal. So what is the difference between what Councillor Cowan did last time and the proposed scheme? It's down to 2 areas. The first is that the motion will now be in the public domain, so members' speeches can reflect the motion as well as the petition. To me, that is actually increasing transparency and openness, which I thought all councillors would welcome. The other difference is the new ability to amend the proposed motion. Councillor Cowan complains the petitioner is not able to listen to the debate and then form a motion. With the new scheme, the original motion will be agreed with the petitioner, so it should be safe to assume the motion captures what they are trying to do. However, by allowing amendments on the night, the petitioner could listen to the debate and then get their nominated councillor to draft that amendment. So I support this change. I believe it increases transparency significantly and openness. No more hidden motions. The petitioner is in charge of the motion and allows the petitioner's nominated councillor to listen to the debate and propose an amendment. Isn't this what Councillor Cohen is actually asking for?
I've communicated our views to Chris, so he's aware of where we are. We will support the constitution amendments. However, we have concerns on point 3, and the issue that I have is I don't have a problem about a motion being submitted 10 days in advance. What I do have is the period of time regarding an amendment. And our group has spoken about it, and I've spoken to Imogen, and we do suggest that there should be, we suggest 5 days, and we'd like you to go back to the Constitutional Review Working Group on that issue. But we are prepared to try it out, because it is an improvement on what we currently have, but we need to understand how things work before we can decide whether we can change. I do have concerns about the possibility of being hijacked with an amendment when the motion's been given such a long time and the amendment comes in on the evening. I think there needs to be some discussion about how we work, because it can happen both ways on this, remember, and we need to have it in a working one. So whilst I wouldn't second this, we are prepared to support this, because I think it is an attempt to improve it, and with the improvements, with changes, you have another go at it, and that's what I would ask to do after we've had maybe a debate or two and a petition to discuss to see how it goes.
Thank you. Andy Troy.
Thank you. I too was invited to the working group. Unfortunately, I was unable to make it, but I did have quite an extensive email exchange, which I think copied in most of the members of the working group. We have to look at the history of this. The problem we've got is that residents come along to council and they feel they're being done over by us. Things happen and they don't understand it. So we need to make sure whatever process we put in place is really, really easy to understand. I'm telling you one thing residents will not understand is when they put a motion in, they agreed it with their councillor, and suddenly it's changed. And we've seen this time and time again. We've seen it with buses motions, we've seen it with post office motions. Stuff gets changed, and with a 10-day notice period, it's easy to change stuff. So we're opposed to the changes on that basis. The idea that petitioners have to ask the councillor to get a motion. Maybe the petitioner's is very anti the council. Maybe they don't want to work with the council. Maybe they want to see what we can come up with. The idea that we say they've got to work with the councillor is absolutely absurd. The other thing is that I'd like to raise is that in the current system, there is no right to amend a petition motion. So the way for a petition motion, it comes in front of us and we vote on it, and we vote against it. I don't see why we need to change that. What we need to do is to give the petitioner the control over which motion goes in front of the council. If you've got a petition, you put it in front of the petition, the petitioner then decides which one they want voted on first. If the petitioner doesn't like the motion, they won't pick it. If they like it, they'll pick it, and then it's up to the council, it's simple yes or no vote. That is much more democratic. It gives the control, and it keeps the control with the petitioner, not with whatever's being decided in the group. So for that reason, we'll be voting against this change.
Okay. On the basis of time, I'll defer.
Okay, I'll try and be very brief. This is just on a lot of these rules I think we would agree with, but the petition one we don't. And also the calling change from 5 days to 20 working days. Sorry, 5 working days to 20 working days. I recognise the difficulties we had with the school crossing patrol as one, and I can see that's where this come from, but how often does that occur? I mean, how many call-ins are there? There's very few of those, and how many have been delayed in that way? I'm guessing the answer is very few. So this is kind of a sledgehammer to cracking up, and you're creating a very long delay there of basically a month before it would be looked at. And that in itself could create further problems. So I think this is a restriction of democratic rights to hold the executives to account, and we're against it.
I didn't realise what time it was on.
Okay, Julian, goes back to you. I've got nothing additional to add, Mr. Mayor, given the time.
Okay. No, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The point I'd like to make is that the Constitution is constantly evolving here, and the changes that we make are not necessarily perfect at each step. We do have to try them out and see how they work. So nothing's really set in concrete. And I do take on board all the comments that we've made, and I'm very happy to receive them. I do appreciate the way the Liberal Democrats work with us on the Constitutional Review Working Board. I think it works very well and seen a degree of common ground over the years. I think the Constitution does move forward sensibly, but you do have to try these things out in practice. I think the main change to the petition is good. It does give the petitioner more control over what happens, and it is optional. He doesn't have to do it. The word may says the petition organiser may submit the right of motion, so it's not compulsory. It's clearly a step in the right direction. It may not be perfect, it may not work out as perhaps we intended, but I think we have to go forward to see how it works and then come back with any suggestions from any member of this council. We're working group will be well received.
Thank you. Okay, nobody else wishes to speak on this matter, so shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Sorry.
I'd like to propose a recorded vote on this motion, please.
Yes, you've got 6.
Okay, Councillor Orty.
Is after 11 okay to continue, Mr. Mayor?
It is to the vote, yes.
Councillor Orty. Councillor Baker.
Against? Sorry, 4.
Shall we start then?
Councillor Goff.
Councillor
Blumenthal. 4. Councillor Barry.
4.
Councillor Burgess.
Abstain.
Councillor Chen.
4.
Councillor Clark. 4. Councillor Cowan.
Against.
Councillor Croy.
Abstain.
Councillor Zielinski.
4.
Councillor Doran.
Abstain.
Councillor Ferris.
4.
Councillor Grandison.
4.
Councillor Kate Haynes. Councillor Mike Haynes. Councillor Hayden Taylor. Councillor Holsall.
4.
Councillor Hare.
4.
Councillor Hayes Simons.
4.
Councillor Holton.
4.
Councillor Holdsworth. 4. Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
4.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
4.
Councillor Kaiser. Councillor Ted. 4. Councillor King. 4. Councillor Lloyd. 4. Councillor McGee Sumner.
4.
Councillor Meyer.
4.
Councillor Murphy.
4.
Councillor Monroe.
4.
Councillor Pittock. Councillor Pollard.
4.
Councillor Richards.
4.
Councillor Ross.
4.
Councillor Sargent.
4.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Duvet.
4.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Duvet.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Weed.
4.
Councillor Eunice.
4.
Okay. Yes, that is carried. Thank you very much. Julian, we are asked for 11 o'clock
I'll be very brief, Mr Mayor, just with your indulgence. One thing I forgot to add on the back end of my speech is that we're appointing a new executive member for housing that's going to look after specifically housing, and that's Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, members. Beautiful meeting. Thank you very much.